Right then, friends, hopefully you can hear me. And hopefully I can just go straight to this camera. Is that working? Is that all doing what it's supposed to do? How much delay is there? It looks like there is a lot of delay. Wowzers. Okay, but we're working. We're working. Hopefully everyone can hear me. First time streaming to YouTube. I've never done this before. Basically, this is what I was going to be painting today anyway. Today's my day off. I still try and sit for a little while and paint. Oh, I'm upside down. I need to flip this camera. Bear with me. That's something I can do right here, right now. So yeah, I normally sit and paint something on my day off, just to try and sort of make a bit of progress through my army. I got this Librarian Dread in sort of a state of preparation where it's actually in sub-assemblies. It's just you can kind of put it together while you spray it, sort of thing, just so that all of your lighting is universal and stuff like that. But I'll probably paint it like this, like in pieces. It sort of makes more sense. And to be honest, most of what I'm going to do is just sit here and put Viejo dark aluminium on this thing. Let's get a little pot there and some dark aluminium. No, yeah, I think it is probably my filters on my mic. Might be the noise suppressor, maybe? Is that sounding a little bit better now? Or maybe it needs to go this way, I don't know. Like, that's with no noise suppression. Well, that's with no noise suppression. It could be that, maybe. I've been trying to mess around with like getting the compressor, limiter and noise suppressor to all kind of sound a little bit nicer, and I've been trying a few different settings and I started to tweak them a little bit, but really annoyingly it's just not easy to kind of listen to stuff. It's not easy to like listen to stuff in real time with OBS. There's ways that you can do it, but it's just a bit, I need to sit and actually play with it properly and figure it out. Ton of background noise now. Okay, that's fine. So if we put it on, but have it around here, does that do it for you? You're the expert, Victor. You're the expert. This is very much your avenue. We are operating with a fair bit of delay here, so it's not super easy to communicate. Okay, well, if that sounds better to you, I will trust you on it. You know your shit. Then I want the second one of these little tins as well. I just take a bit of water out of my water pot, and that just stops me getting a bunch of metallic flake in my main water pot. I can use this to wash my brush with now. For those that haven't worked with these Viejo metallics before, they are designed, they're straight from pot to airbrush, so you can see how thin they are. They're like as thin as a wash, but they're really, really rich in pigment. You'll see when this goes on just how good they are. They're pretty ridiculous, so as you will start to observe now, the power of these metallics. Can't recommend these enough to folk who haven't tried them. I say in like almost every video, really. I mention it all the time in videos, how these are my metallic of choice with good reason, and I do advise others to try them. And sometimes folk will try them and come back to me and say, yeah, I think they're really great, but I'm yet to have anyone try them and say, oh no, I don't get on with those. Hey, Mr. Stacy, how are you, buddy? If you want to finagle a little bit more, a tiny bit of reverb would do some good, but totally wastes. Okay, no, that's something I can bear in mind. I'm not going to fanny with it right this second. I want to paint, but that's good feedback. I can work with that. You're good, excellent. That's the correct answer. That's the answer we want to hear. Do you know, I probably should have not glued this midsection together. I wonder if it's too late to... Yeah, that plastic glue is well and truly bonded now. That's a shame. That's going to make a few bits harder to reach than I realised. Like, it's okay, I'll work around it, but... You know... Sometimes you just make your life a little bit harder without meaning to, don't you? That's the way of the world. Yeah, you can see, as I was saying, that this dark alley is just... It's just ridiculous. Like, I don't... I've tried painting with lead belcher again recently, you know, going back to, you know, what I sort of always knew prior to discovering this paint, and I can't do it. I just can't do it anymore. This paint has spoiled me. Literally spoiled me. It's just so good. Nothing good wash won't hide. Hey Luke, how you doing? I have a massive Aeho bundle arriving hopefully today, so I can start on my Horus bookends. Oh, you bought the Horus bookends? They're pretty exciting. I'm just trying to fix this camera angle for you a little bit, just so that when I'm in my sort of rest position, I'm actually fully in shot. I could probably get a touch closer. That'll help. My tripod has not had to do this for a little while, so you have to bear with me for a couple of seconds just while I figure this out, but I won't keep you all waiting too long. Alright, how's that? It's a bit better, isn't it? It's a little bit better. I just want to be, you know, as in shot as I can be when I'm in my resting position, as it were. Yeah, a smarter man would have definitely left that waist section off, though. I've made a rod for my own back a bit there. You won them? Holy shit, dude! That's rad. That's rad. If you haven't seen it, a little ways down the channel, I've got a giveaway at the moment running to celebrate hitting 1K subs. And, like, you know, I'm not saying it to brag, but I'm certainly saying it to encourage you to enter. The prizes are pretty massive. There's a lot up for grabs. So if you are the type of person who enjoys a good giveaway, then check the video, a few posts down, the 1K celebration video. That explains what the prizes are and how to enter. And I was thinking about doing these silver, but I don't know. Actual armor plates that are over the skeleton. I don't know. And I'm doing a competition this month as well. It's only running for this month, but that is for my patrons. So, you know, there's no guarantee that everyone will want to get in on that. But like, my Patreon starts at $1 a month, like literally, you know, an American dollar, like about 70p. So if you fancy a painting competition with a bit of a difference, then that's definitely one that's worth having a look at. We're basically, I sort of came up with a brief, like, you know, this is kind of what I want you to do sort of thing. And part of how I'm going to be judging the entries is actually on why people chose to do what they chose to do, as opposed to just purely on their painting. So it's an opportunity to sort of enjoy the fun of a friendly competition, and you know, I should stress it's a friendly competition. It's not designed to get anybody really fired up or anything. But without it being just all about how good you are as a painter, you know, sometimes it can feel, when you are still sort of, you know, not too deep into your painting journey, and Grim says, funny looking Templar. Mate, not today, not today. I would like to do some more Templars soon, though. I do like them. I like painting them. I like painting black in general, so that'd be pretty dope. Yeah, I do think, sometimes when painting competitions come around, if you're sort of quite early into your painting journey, it can just feel a bit like, oh, well, what's the point? Like, why bother entering? Because, clearly someone who's more experienced than me is going to win it. And I think that's a really... It's a shame, because I don't think it represents, like, how inclusive our hobby is, I don't think that really is what the spirit of the Warhammer community is about. And I also don't think that that's necessarily how a lot of painting competitions are judged anyway. Like, I don't think technical ability is the only merit that people recognize in miniature painting, And so I wanted to kind of design a competition where it was sort of outwardly known from the word go that by entering this competition, you're not just strictly competing as like on grounds of your technical ability as a painter. You're competing. Part of how you're going to be competing is on explaining your thoughts and motivations behind what you chose to paint. And I think that's like, actually for me, it's a lot more interesting, about why people choose to do the things that they do when they paint, what they were thinking when they made that decision. You like the blue? Yeah, I wanted to take a bit of a different approach with this. Like, normally Blood Angels, Furioso, like the Librarian Dread, you normally see like a blue sarcophagus and red armor. But my guys are a successors chapter called the Angels Argentum, and they are silver armored, you see? This is obviously just primed. It's just primed in black and silver, but I haven't actually started painting that yet. But because they're silver armored, I sort of, I'm looking at this Librarian Dreadlord, I'm like, I definitely want this as an HQ. It's one of the best HQs Space Marines can have, period. But then I was sort of saying to myself, like, I really don't want to just paint the whole thing silver. And actually, yeah, I'll speak more about that in a bit. Vehicles for this army in general are made a little bit difficult by the presence of so much silver. And I'm sort of trying to figure out in my head, like, what would be a sweet way of doing it that, still makes it kind of cleanly and clearly identify as a librarian, but doesn't involve doing a silver skeleton and silver armor plates, which is just too much fucking silver as far as I'm concerned. And I sort of thought about it, and I was like, well, what about if, instead of just the sarcophagus being blue, what about if, like, the whole armor of the Dreadnought is blue? And then, we explore some sort of accent in here and there that involves silver and red, which are the sort of two main chapter colors that feature in the normal workup for its Marines. I just thought that was a whole, a slightly more thought out and an interesting approach to it, and it meant that I wasn't going to end up just painting this fucking blob of silver, which, like, at the moment I've ended up just with, the way luck and fate sometimes work, I've ended up with an extra Contemptor that I didn't intend to own, and I've actually started sort of looking at my Redemptor, which is all sprayed silver, ready to be painted in, like, the normal chapter color scheme, and I've started looking at it, I'm like, I really don't know if I want to paint a fucking entirely silver Dreadnought. Like, I really don't know if that's a thing that I want in my army. Perhaps didn't think that through when I was planning my color scheme. And I'm almost tempted to just run two Contemptors instead of a Redemptor and a Contemptor, purely so that I can have a rethink on the color scheme. I mean, I could just obviously just repaint the Redemptor as well, so, I have several different angles of attack. But no, that's an interesting point you make, Mikey, about sort of things being new and original. I do think it's not just about that, Like, I do think that Warhammer, perhaps more than more than a lot of hobbies, is very personal, isn't it? You know, it's very. You don't really do Warhammer for anyone else. You do Warhammer with other people, but you don't really do it for other people. Those of us that, you know, play a lot of Magic the Gathering, we sort of know all too well what it feels like when the direction of your hobby is sort of almost dictated by external influence. You know, in Magic, like if you want to play in tournaments, you know, you pretty much got to play the best decks. You don't really get to, every now and again, you'll get to brew a deck and do well, but most of us just don't have that level of skill, so we have to kind of play a deck list that someone else created and learn how to pilot it, and, you know, we don't necessarily get to personalize our hobby as much as we might wish to. And then, you know, by the time we do get an opportunity, like when it comes to, you know, owning altered cards or pimp cards or whatever, that ends up being something that you almost become sort of quite obsessed with, because it's so refreshing to have some agency and control over your hobby. Whereas with Warhammer, like, it's all like that, you know, it's that is what the hobby is. The hobby is all about your interpretation of it, your thoughts, your feelings, your methods, your ways of doing shit, and you know, you do it all for yourself. And so, you know, with that said, like, some originality and a bit of, you know, out of the box thinking is obviously, you know, very rewarding, because when it's such a personal hobby, you don't really want your stuff to have too much in common with other people's stuff if you can help it. At least a lot of people don't. You know, some people don't mind, but a lot of people feel somewhere like that. And, you know, I maybe feel like it's also nice to just kind of get in people's heads a little bit and understand, like, what provokes their thoughts, you know, what motivates them as painters, what inspires them as painters. Like, that kind of shit's pretty interesting to me, you know. I think that probably, a lot of that probably comes from being a content creator, you know, from wanting to make these videos, and, like, I want to know what makes hobbyists tick, because I want to make videos that appeal to them. So I have this kind of natural slant to my thinking about the hobby, where I sort of want to know what makes people tick, you know. But you're metal, okay. I think a lot of this internal stuff here is actually supposed to be metal, but we'll see what we decide to do metal and what we don't. Yeah, but, like, when I was coming up with the ideas for this competition, I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to really create something that, like, everyone could feel like it's worth entering, you know. If a competition is purely just about the quality of your painting, which is kind of, you know, how it's sort of how Golden Demon's put across, even though it's not really what Golden Demon is about. But it is sort of how Golden Demon's put across, and, you know, like, no one who doesn't feel like they're a really strong, confident, capable painter would ever dream of entering Golden Demon, right? And my thought was more sort of, well, you know, what about a painting competition that is for those other people, those people who maybe feel like, you know, they love painting and they have a lot of enthusiasm for it, and they spend a lot of time on it, and, you know, it's like their favorite part of the hobby or whatever. But maybe, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're, like, super confident about it and that they think that they're amazing painters or anything like that. They might just love it. And, like, you should definitely not feel excluded from that sort of fun, competitive side of the hobby just by, you know, not thinking that you're, like, at an expert level or whatever, right? It's all about just creating something that's inviting. Skill or the cash to back it up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Golden Demon is corrupt. I wouldn't use that kind of language or, you know, pattern of thinking. I do think that there's more to Golden Demon than just your ability as a painter. You know, I think that they're looking for painters who represent what they want to see from miniatures painted for the hobby, which is not just about how great you are as a painter. You know, it's about how you hit their sort of unspoken brief of how they want to visually represent the hobby, which is a lot more, you know, it's a lot more of an abstract thing to quantify, and we've all done it. You know, we've all looked at something that's had like a second or a third in Golden Demon and been like, that, you know, that doesn't look particularly any better than like things that I've painted. Like, I'm really surprised that that's a second or a third, because, you know, I wouldn't expect my stuff to get like a second or a third at Golden Demon, and it's, you know, what it comes down to is that entry sort of hits the brief of what they're sort of looking for stylistically, you know, the message and the method and all that kind of thing, but maybe the execution wasn't quite there, that it didn't feel fair to give it a first place, let's say. And that's like kind of the thing with Golden Demon is, you know, it's not strictly speaking just about painting. But this is it. This is why, you know, this is why I think it's important that the culture surrounding the hobby doesn't exclude those people who, you know, love painting but are less confident at it. You know, at the end of the day, like when I was looking at making my content, for example, you know, I could have set out to just always paint the very best stuff that I'm able to paint. You know, to always just work to the absolute limits of my skill level. I could do that, and it would be harder for me. It would be, you know, in terms of like the amount of effort that would go into actually creating a video, it would be harder for me. So, you know, on one side, I maybe didn't choose that because I didn't want to necessarily work that hard every single day, every single week. Also, I think, you know, there's a lot of that content out there already. There's a lot of people who showcase high-end miniature painting, finger quotes. That is not an underrepresented niche in Warhammer content. You know, we've got like Sergio Calvo has started doing YouTube now. We've got Vince Venturella, we've got Travarian, Cujo, John Ninas. Like, we are not short of high-end painters on YouTube now, and I think, you know, what YouTube maybe, or at least, you know, when I was setting out to figure this channel out, to figure out what I wanted to do for this channel, I sort of thought to myself, you know, I think maybe what YouTube needs is more people kind of trying to show people how to bridge that gap. Like what's in between that gap, you know, what's better than the Warhammer TV sort of battle ready, or, you know, basic workup sort of standard. Like what's you know, a bit above that, but isn't, you know, 40-50 hours per miniature kind of level, because not everybody wants to pump that much time into their painting. And that's really where the philosophy for the whole channel came from, is just trying to help people bridge that gap. Funny New Kengo is very much the challenge now. Something original and fresh can be a hard make. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, like Warhammer is a pretty well represented subject on YouTube anyway, right? And, you know, finding a way to make your mark is, that's why I sort of talk about like level ups a lot and stuff like that. So, you know, what I'm trying to help people with here is not how to become a master painter, because I'm not a master painter. I don't have that knowledge to give to people. You know, that said, can I paint to a higher standard than you often see me paint on the channel? Yeah, of course I can. Like a lot of the stuff that I do on the channel is not my best work. Some of it is. Some of what I do on the channel is definitely what I would call my best work, but a lot of it isn't, because a lot of it is recorded not for that purpose, you know, not for the purpose of showing you what is the best I can do. Like, Golden Demon wouldn't accept my Hello Kitty Marines years back. I should take legal action. Are you serious? Yeah, no, I know you are, Mr. Stacy. I know you are. I know you are. Don't you worry. You beautiful boy. They wouldn't take your Hello Kitty Marines? Are you serious, Grim? That seems a bit, odd. I don't really know why that would be the case. But yeah, you know, the point I'm trying to make is sometimes inspiration is not, it doesn't come from seeing something that we feel is outside of our scope for achievement. You know, that isn't always inspiring. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's inspiring to see something that's just painted to such an exquisite level and it's like, I hope I can get to that point someday. But a lot of the time it can be a bit exhausting for people, you know, we see a lot of really fucking well painted stuff all the time. And the angle for me was to kind of try to show people something in between that. And that's kind of what I'm starting to, you know, build my YouTube identity around now is bridging that gap, you know, finding those level ups, finding what that intermediate position is between the absolute incredible top tier stuff and the beginner stuff that, you know, we can start to feel restricted by that quite quickly, yeah? Brother Buzz. Oh, did you do the Buzz Lightyear Marine? I fucking love that shit. Love it, man. Any of those colour schemes where people just fuck with Space Marines and make them look like stuff from pop culture, that always makes me happy. Those pop vinyl Marines, I actually think they're pretty cool, you know. So the one that Scott painted, I really liked it. Dead apprehensive about doing these bookends. I might not paint them or only do one and keep the other. It's a toughie with stuff like that, Mikey, because it's, you know, it's by design it's a display piece. Do you know what I mean? No one is going to want to do a quick and easy paint job on those bookends. Like they literally exist to give painters an opportunity to push a little bit and, you know, do something a bit spicy. So of course, if you sort of own a pair, you're probably going to want them to look really fucking good. Like that's, you know, kind of what they exist for. They're not game pieces. They're not designed for in any way anything to do with playing Horus Heresy. They exist for the sole purpose of you showing off and displaying them. So, you know, apprehension's probably the right thing to be feeling, to be honest with you, mate. It's probably what most of us would feel in that situation. I'm just starting to just spot here any areas that I've smudged blue and just starting to kind of chip back away at it. Just to make sure that I haven't got any silver where it shouldn't be. I'm going to be coming in with some Nuln shortly, and I want everything to, you know, look tasty. This is just Cantor Blue Air that I'm using here, just the darkest blue of the workup. The whole workup is Cantor Blue, Calidor Sky, and Hoeth Blue. If anyone's interested, it's just what I use for blue power armor. Normally they're just the three blues that I like for blue power armor. Other blues are available, of course. Couldn't bear messing them up and having them stare at me in disappointment. Yeah, no. It's nice that GWIP is starting to work with other companies like Bandai Funko. Yeah, absolutely. The McFarlane Toys Space Marine looks particularly interesting because it's the more posable, customizable one. I mean, I don't know how much this is worth to you, Mikey, but just being completely honest with you, mate, I would be a bit apprehensive before sitting down to start those Horus bookends, and I'm a commission painter, do you know what I mean? Like, painting's my job. And I'd still be feeling a little bit like, don't want to fuck these up. You know, it's... Unfortunately, it's the nature of that kind of stuff, man. It's what it's all about. You know, that sort of thing isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be something that you use as a demonstration of everything that you know. It's kind of what they make those kind of pieces for. And Horus Heresy in general tends to push painters a little bit more anyway. The miniatures are just sort of sculpted in a way that is a little bit harder to paint, and the presentation style of the painted miniatures in the box art and stuff is all a little bit more advanced, you know, that kind of shit. Right. So we will be coming back and doing some more silver. There is going to be other silver bits on this. I have to tell you what, I think this targeting scope's just going to be silver as well. I was considering doing the casing for it in black, but I'm just going to do it in silver, and then do the lens in something that isn't silver. Yeah, there will be other bits of silver on this, like when we get into decoration and stuff, and obviously when we start the arms, there's silver to do on the arms, but I'm going to just take a break from painting blocks of silver now and do a quick bit of washing. So this is another one of the things about the way I paint, like the method that I teach. There's an order of operations to it that's designed to sort of not let you get too bogged down, you know, not leave you feeling too overworked by your mini painting. Would you be interested in one for a channel piece as either a giveaway or charity piece? The problem with them is, mate, I'll tell you what, dude, I'd love to, but I think bookends kind of belong in pairs, you know? I feel like if I did one to give to someone as a giveaway, they'd kind of want the other one, do you know what I mean? Kinlaw, I'm using Vallejo Metal Color Dark Aluminium. This is like my standard go-to silver paint. It's kind of the only silver paint I really use regularly, to be honest with you. Is the Bandai Marine pre-order this coming? Yeah, it's pretty soon. It is pretty soon. I've done to buy Space Marine Primaris Intercessor from McFarlane Toys. Also pre-primed? That's interesting. I wonder if it's been mold line treated as well then, because action figures typically are a lot worse for mold lines than even miniatures. Tell a lot more in the way of any Horus models, much more the judgmental spyglass from the community I've noticed, whether it's just a niche. The Horus Heresy community is kind of weird, Mikey. It used to be like super inclusive and really welcoming. And a lot of the more sort of old school people that have been around Horus Heresy for a long time are really like that. But what seems to have happened is, like, as more and more of the dickheads started getting kicked out of the main Warhammer community and sort of made to not feel welcome for being dickheads, a lot of them seem to have landed in Horus Heresy, unfortunately. So recently, Horus Heresy seems to be getting a bit of a reputation of being a dickhead zoo, which is kind of not deserved, because actually Horus Heresy is a really, really nice community and, like, very, very supportive. But at the same time, a lot of the bad eggs from the 40k community have kind of migrated to Horus Heresy, so, you know, you do just kind of have to look out for them. Baldy, hello, mate. How you doing? How's your Saturday so far? Let's start to get some Nuln oil on this. So I'm using matte Nuln Oil for all of the silvers on the Under Armour because I want them to all look really kind of shitted up and, you know, nice and dark. And I'm being pretty heavy with the Nuln as well. I haven't ever really, never been one of those painters to go very sparing with the Nuln Oil. I always think it's one of those shades that once you start using it, you know, you may as well fucking commit to it. I like a good heavy Nuln Oil wash personally. I just like how it looks. All right, just base coated by Plague Marines for the foot. Oh, nice! You started it at last. Have you got your oil paints yet, mate? So I know you're using my method, right? That was what we were talking about in comments, if I remember rightly. You're planning to use my method? Absolutely love working with oils for stuff like that. That's kind of where they really come into their own. I use a lot of oils on my towel as well. For those of you that have seen my towel video, you'll know what I'm talking about, the Ghost Keel battlesuit that I did. Not too worried here about if I get any Nuln Oil on the blue around the feet specifically, because there's a little bit of weathering powder in the basing scheme for these guys, and obviously the feet tend to get the biggest hit of the weathering powder anyway, because they're at the bottom of the miniature. So don't really need to be careful or take my time down there, just because I sort of get to hide it for free, just as part of how the basing scheme works. It is both the double-ended Assmaster and it's my little, I've got a little personal fan. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There's also a lot of mailing boxes on the floor. Can you see it just perched on the end of my desk there? Just beyond the camera. There's a little tiny fan. And the cycling of the motor sort of comes through. You watch. If I turn it off, you see it's probably gone now. But the problem is that now that I've turned it off, I've got probably about 5 minutes before I start to get a little bit sweaty. So we'll see. If it doesn't get too hot, then I'll leave it off. Everything but the Reaper stuff has come. Where are you trying to buy Reaper stuff from at the moment? Where are you trying to source it from at the moment? You certainly don't have to use those Reaper paints. You know, they're just matte acrylics. You could use Viejo Game Color. You could use Scale 75. Like, they've all got equivalent colors. And Daka Daka has a conversion chart, a color conversion chart. You don't even need to use exactly the same colors anyway. That's kind of something I really try to instill in people these days. You know, the colors that I use are the colors that I have. You do not need to use exactly the same colors I use. You know, as long as you're using consistent colors, miniature to miniature, you don't need to match my colors because it's still going to look the same essentially. Yeah, that's right. That's right. They have a UK warehouse. That's what I was going to say. And I've actually got an affiliate link as well. If you look in the description of any of my normal videos, it won't be in the description of this video, obviously, because it's a stream. But if you look in the description of any of my normal videos, you will see that I've actually got a Reaper Miniatures referral link, which I think should, if it's been set up correctly by Reaper, it should link through to their UK warehouse. But yeah, don't feel like you have to use the Reaper stuff. It's definitely not the case, dude. If you can get like Viejo Game Color more easily, that is a matte miniature painting acrylic. You know, it's going to do the same job. If you can get Scale 75 easier, then that is a matte miniature painting acrylic. It will do the same job. Chimera colors, again, matte acrylic. You know, you just find something that is the correct luster, and it's going to give you what you're looking for. Behave, Grim. Fucking dad jokes are supposed to be my thing for a start. Still quite new to mini painting, so I always just sort of go with what people use. Yeah, I tell you what, Baldy, I'm not saying this. You know, don't feel like I'm trying to get on your case here by saying this, but that is a trap. And honestly, you know, not even as someone who feels like he deserves to be listened to because he makes painting videos or anything like that. Like, that's not my angle here. My angle here is I've been fucked over by that kind of thinking myself. It's slowed down my painting journey. It's a trap, and it will slow down your advancement. It will slow down your learning if you obsess over, I must have the same materials as my favorite painters. Even when I recommend stuff, you know, I used to always say, this is the best, that is the best, this is what you should be using, that is what you should be using. And I realized, like, you have to completely abandon that language. It's not relevant. What I say to people now when they ask for recommendations is I say, you know, I really like this, or this is what I use, or whatever. You know, I'm really careful to adjust my language to make it clear to people that what I use is just what I use. It's not what you have to use. Yeah, that's how we're looking with the main body with a bit of Nuln on it. And then we can now take a break from Nuln oiling our little asses off and go back to doing some silvers now. So we'll grab each of these arms. And I think I'll actually grab a hobby handle for these arms as well. What I'll do is paint all this junk on the inside first and then flip it around. And I'll keep it on a hobby handle just because I don't want to handle this too much and get like chips all over it or whatever. Hunter, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to this rarest of streams. I used to stream 5 days a week, like, over on Twitch. That used to be like my main source of income, actually, when I first started freelancing. Because obviously, you know, commissions, when you first start out actually trying to do it for a living, commissions aren't going to make you a wage. Everyone knows that. And so when I first started out, I streamed on Twitch as well. And this was back when I was painting 2D for a living, which I still do a bit of now, but not as much. And when I stopped streaming, I really honestly thought, like, I don't think I'll ever stream again, to be honest. Like, I'm just done with it. It's not for me. And here I am, you know, a few months down the line, and it's like I've just met so many nice Warhammer people lately that I'm like, do you know what? If even 3 or 4 of them turn up to chat while I'm painting, it'll just be a nice time. So it's worth streaming just for that, just because it will be a nice time, you know? That's like all the motivation I need. There's very few GW paints that I'm a fan of anymore, because once I started on Viejo, that's what worked for me. But I'm dead excited to try the new Necron. Oh, Mikey, you can fucking have my bottle of it. It's terrible. It's, you know, like, that's even considering everything that I just said about how I'm really careful not to talk about things being good and bad. Mikey, go and have a look when we're finished watching this stream at the video that I made on painting Zarakan Dynasty Necrons using the new Necron paints. It's the only paint out of everything that I tried. I tried basically all the paints that GW recommends you use for Necrons. I tried them all, and it's the only one that I didn't like out of all of them. And I actually, the reason I say like it's bad is because it's not a personal thing. It's specifically, the reason I say that it's a bad paint is because it's designed to create a glowing effect, which necessitates you, in order for it to work how it wants to work, what it basically does is stain surfaces yellow, filters surfaces with a really heavy luminescent yellow, and then fills gaps with a green. And that effect of bright yellow on the surface and green in the gaps produces what looks like a glow, which is true, it does. It does produce what looks like a glow. But then what do you do when you've got a flat surface? So give me a second. The only thing you can do when you've got a flat surface is then prepare it with like a value guide, and then glaze it over. So here you can see this was all done with the glowy paint, right? And if you look at like here, where you've got gaps for it to sit in, and then a flat surface, Like it's doing what it's supposed to do, yeah? If you look around here, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's like green in the gaps and then yellowy green on the surface. But this took me longer than if I just painted this gradient like the traditional way using glazes. It took me like twice as long because I had to basically create the entire gradient using black and white, then glaze over it all with the green paint, and then even it all back out because it's like it goes really blotchy over flat surfaces. So it's, yeah, the glow is the only one that I don't recommend. The rest of them, like the Runelord Brass and the Canoptek Alloy, are fucking sick. They're so nice. The Canoptek Alloy and Runelord Brass are actually paints that I constantly paint with now since buying them to make this video. So really highly recommend those. Hey Schmutzly, haven't seen you around in a while, dude. How you doing? Did you see my tweet on the tweeters about going live over on the tube? Why is my category set to gaming? That's not right. No. That's better. Oh really? It came up in your Rex. That's awesome. I didn't realize that the channel was like visible enough to come up in anybody's Rex. There goes my Mountain Dew Wars. Yeah, don't do it, mate. Don't do it. It'll take you longer than if you use normal paint. And this is the point. This is what I was getting at. I'm very, like I said, I'm very careful not to use like good and bad language when I talk about paints and stuff, because obviously it's subjective to a large degree. But if we're talking about something like that Necron glow paint, that's designed to save you time when painting glow effects. That's literally what it's for. Its purpose is save you time when you're painting glow effects. So if it takes longer to do glow effects with it, then it fails, doesn't it? It fails at its job. Yeah, I guess so, Schmatz. I guess so. That's awesome. I'm really glad you're here. It's lovely to have a familiar face from the Twitch days. I'm turning the fan back on, by the way, so you're going to have to deal with that background noise again. Sorry about it. All right, let's get some silver on the arm now. Well, that's a bit too thin. I just added a touch of water to that because it had been sat for a minute. You have to be so careful with these Viejo paints when you add water to them. They disperse really, really quickly. I should add, by the way, this isn't like a commission or for you, like, you know, for YouTube or anything. I am just really painting this to like high tabletop, so don't be surprised if you see me being pretty quick and rough and dirty with a lot of the painting that I'm doing on this. It's not being painted for the purpose of impressing anyone. It's just for my Studio Blood Angels army. So the plan is, I don't know how many of you are aware of this or not, but what I want to be able to do basically is like invite Patreons round to, obviously, you know, in a post-Rona world where we're not all scared of killing each other by accident. I want to be able to like invite Patreons round and sort of let them kind of come and have a day just jamming casual games of Warhammer and getting to learn about other factions. And so, you know, in order to achieve that purpose, I need to kind of come up with a 2,000 point army for like all the popular factions so that people can come around and try them, right? And a lot of my followers have been really, really helping recently with that, like donating miniatures that they don't need. Somebody today bought me, I posted about this on Twitter, somebody bought me a secondhand Betrayal at Calv box set because both my CSM and Loyalist armies needed, between them, quite a few of the miniatures out of it. And like I'd spotted it as a bargain and couldn't afford it at the time. So I posted it in my Discord saying like, look, I can't afford this right now, But if any of you wants an absolute bargain, this box set normally goes at 300 quid when it's complete, and it was 75 quid. And one of them just fucking bought it for me, and it's like, oh my god, that's a level of kindness that I wasn't ready for. You know, I didn't expect to come home to that today after I'd done my post run. It really caught me off guard a little, to be honest. The kindness of the community that I'm building is incredible, absolutely incredible. But yeah, to answer your questions, Spurs, I'm doing really well. Like, moving away from Twitch was a really good, healthy choice for me. The environment on there just wasn't really conducive to what I was trying to achieve. And it was starting to break me down, you know. It was starting to make me feel like a bit of a failure. I feel like I wasn't really good at the thing that I know I'm good at, which is, you know, sharing knowledge and ideas and thoughts with people. And it was really, yeah, it was starting to make me kind of not really want to do it, you know. And so I sort of got away from Twitch and started making recorded content, which just kind of suits my personality better anyway. And the recorded content has been so enjoyable to make that, like, here I am now a few months later, and I'm actually streaming on, oh shit, I've just made a mistake. Streaming on YouTube because I just actually fancied it. Like, I actually just thought it'd be a really nice time to just come and do a stream today. And a few months ago, when I quit Twitch, I would have never thought that would happen, honestly. When I quit Twitch, I was so done with streaming, like so done with streaming. Hey, Phrase, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. So, you know, to even want to be on here streaming again is a big step from back then. And it feels good. It feels really good because, you know, like, streaming is not... I know now that streaming is not a thing that I'm well suited to doing regularly. It's not a thing that I, you know, should be doing like every day. I'm just not wired right for that life. But on the other side of it, I really love sometimes just having a bit of company and chatting to people while I paint, you know. Sometimes that's exactly what I need, like that little bit of extra motivation that comes from it, and, you know, just that little kind of nice casual hangout sort of setting in which to get some painting done. That is really good for me, and I really enjoy it. So it feels lovely to actually have some desire to stream again, to actually want to stream again. Got my painting mojo back. These Scale 75 metallics are amazing. Yes, doggy. Yes, they're brilliant, aren't they? They're really nice, very bright, very good, rich colors as well, which is odd because, you know, Scale 75 is kind of not associated with like bright, rich colors, but their metallics are very much like that. Is there a particular model or set of models which you've had the most fun or given you the best sense of accomplishment? Recently would be, give me a second to just go over to my shelves. So recently, there's two miniatures in particular that I think sum this up. This Dark Apostle that I did for my word bearers. This is the warlord for my word bearers army, and as such, I wanted to make sure that I did a really good job of it, right? Like, it's the warlord for your army. You want it to look as pretty as possible. And so what I actually did for this was I built a video around it that's to do with how to paint your best, which is going to be coming out next week. And the idea behind the video, the concept behind the video is it's not about how to paint better than anyone else. It's about what mental cues, what headspace you need to put yourself in to ensure that the painting you do on any given day is the best painting you could have done on that day. You know, how to not fuck yourself over, you know, how to give yourself the best fighting chance of doing the best work you can do. Let me, there you go. There's a lot of sunlight coming right directly onto my painting area at the minute, so it's just making it a bit more visible for you. Yeah, he's lovely. I'm really, really happy with him. And I do think, you know, across the 2 days that I was working on this, it took me, you know, more than a single session. I was painting this over a period of 2 days. But over the 2 days that I was working on it, I do really feel like by adopting a certain specific mental attitude and getting myself into a certain headspace, I was able to make sure that I painted the best I could possibly paint on those days. So that was a real feeling of accomplishment because it, you know, I followed my own advice and got the result that I was trying to show other people how to get. Which, you know, when you're trying to make content, like, that's really important, you know. And I advise other content creators to go back and follow their own instructions, you know, go back and actually do the things you're telling people to do. And I don't mean that, obviously, you know, like the way I show people to do things is obviously the way I do things, but what I mean is, like, actually go and follow one of your own tutorials, and see if it gets you the result that you think it should get you, you know, just by strictly adhering to one of your own tutorials. So that was a really nice feeling for me because it made me feel like this, you know, this video that I'm about to put out was going to do what I wanted it to do. And then the other one recently that's really given me a strong sense of achievement is this guy. We actually have to zoom out a bit for him because he's so fucking massive. And that is largely because, again, I wanted to demonstrate with this, one of the big things I wanted to do with this was dismiss a few rumors. Dismiss the idea that white is hard to paint, because I actually think white's one of the easier colors to paint, but I think people approach painting white in a really inefficient way that makes it a lot more difficult. And so I wanted to demonstrate how doable white is. And I also wanted to demonstrate how you don't need to be super clean and super precise and super tight in order to get effects that look really beautiful. And as you can see from the highlighting on this, if I pick a spot of highlighting, let's say this spot here, and I show you my super zoom, look at it. That is not cleanly highlighted at all, as is all of the rest of it. Look, it's really textural, really, really textural, all of it. But when it's not super zoomed, when it's viewed the way that you're actually going to view it with human eyes, it looks really beautifully highlighted. It looks really striking and noticeable. And that's kind of what I was talking about with this. The entire video that I built this around was to do with, you know, painting in an imprecise, in a loose, in a very sort of feeling your way through the process and not trying to be, you know, not trying to be a hero kind of thing. And the miniature that I got out of the end of it, I love it so much. It's my favorite thing on my miniature shelves at the moment, this Ghost Keel. I just absolutely adore it. Every time I look at it, every single thing that I attempted with it went exactly how I wanted it to go, looked exactly how I wanted it to look. And that just, you know, it just felt really good. That just felt like an achievement, to be able to, you know, to pull that together. So to answer your question, those are probably the two best examples I can give you of things that have given me that real sense of achievement. I just heard Jenny sneezing in the background there, bless her. Hey, Exordium, how you doing? One of my old mates who didn't even realise did Warhammer, Exordium Miniatures, didn't actually even know that he was into Warhammer until after I started making Warhammer-related content. What are you blown away by? Remember, Mikey, the whole point about everything that I try to show on this channel is that all of it is achievable. None of it is like super high-end, super difficult, takes years to learn how to do. All of it is stuff that you can pick up just with a little bit of practice and just by knowing how to do the techniques. So, you know, don't be blown away. Just be inspired to give it a go, my dude. Be inspired to give it a go, because I promise you, the stuff that I show you folks how to do, like when you try it and the mystery starts to disappear, that feels good. You're gonna really like how that feels. It's gonna be very inspiring. Those level up moments, as I like to call them. So just give it a go. Just try it. When you see me doing shit that you think is impressive, it's usually going to end up in content. So find the content that it relates to, look at the tutorial and try and do it. It's good to see you, Exordium. You been taking care of yourself? Exordium is someone that you can find on Instagram, actually. He's a fantastic painter. Well worth checking out his miniatures. They're very, very good. He's kind of, in a lot of ways, the opposite of me. Like, he's one of these painters that's really willing to, like, put in the time and the grind. Which is funny, because he doesn't have a lot of free time, from what I understand, but he's very willing to pump a lot of it into his minis. And you can really see it in a lot of the results that he gets. Like, a lot of the results, you look at the thing and you're like, fuck me, that must have taken a little while. That must have taken a minute. You know, which is really nice, because, you know, for me as a speed painter, for me as someone who focuses on, like, how can you get, you know, the best possible results out of the minimum possible investment of time, that kind of thing's obviously very interesting for me. You know, it's very exciting for me to look at that kind of painting, because it's like I said, it's, you know, the opposite of what I do. That's what I mean, but I'm blown away by how you make it sound simple. But that's the point, dude. It is simple. It is simple. That doesn't mean that you're going to try it the first time and it's going to look exactly the same as how I do it. You know, even simple things require some practice to get good at and to, you know, to become familiar with. And you can't hold yourself to this standard where, you know, everything is black and white. I either can do it or I can't do it. You know, the important thing for growing as a painter is to realize that techniques and executions aren't divided by what you can and can't do. They're divided by what you have and haven't done yet. You know, and the more you continue to put in the time and the effort, the sooner you'll find yourself able to deliver the execution. But, you know, the nice thing about or at least I think, if you don't mind me sort of selling myself for a moment, I think the nice thing about the stuff that I'm showing and stuff that I'm trying to kind of push over to people is that none of the results I get expect you to spend a really long time at the painting desk in order to actually execute them. While you're learning them, it might take you some time. You know, you might be sat there for quite a few hours trying to learn them, but once you've got them down pat, they're going to allow you to turn out armies of really nicely painted miniatures without having to spend forever at the desk. And I think that's, you know, it's a useful thing. And it can be very empowering as well, you know, realizing that this hobby doesn't have to be something that you set aside 20, 30 hours a week for. You can still own beautifully painted miniatures and get a lot of pleasure in the process of painting them, even if you only have, 5 hours a week spare or something. And I think that's a very worthy way of painting, and it's something that is deserving of a bit of consideration. Not just that, but it's how I love to paint. It's how I love to go about this thing. These ridges here are silver. I didn't realise that. Didn't paint them silver when I had that side flipped up, but they should be. Right, that's all that bit. Yeah, lovely, lovely, lovely. All right, what we're saying over there. Might even be one complete one on there. I like to class myself as a whip painter. Yeah, you just fill the internet with beautiful whips. That ain't a bad thing. Honestly, Mikey, I think the wisest people in this world are just the ones that are the most articulate. To be completely honest with you, I don't think I'm a very wise person. I don't do sensible things. Hamsugi says, only dropping in as I have to be out for the afternoon. Love your work and love seeing you in my Twitter feed. Have a good stream. Oh, that's so kind, Hamsugi. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate that. It's really kind. Yeah, I have terrible common sense. I have terrible financial skills. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and it's funny because you're not the first person to try and tattoo me with the wisdom remark. And I don't think I am a wise person, but what I am is I'm an articulate person, and so when I explain things to people, I can generally find the words to explain them in a way that is easy to hear. And that doesn't mean that I'm even necessarily good at that all the time. Jesus, I definitely have my days where I cannot word properly at all. It's really funny. Me and Jenny had a day the other day where we were trying to have a conversation. We were literally trying to talk to each other, and we were both having a day where we just couldn't word properly, and we just kept spouting half sentence babble at each other. Turn into Gandhi after 10 pints. Yeah, not even 10 pints these days, mate. I don't really drink. In fact, funny enough, it's weird you should say that. Yesterday, I posted on Twitter that I treated myself to a whiskey. I really don't drink very often at all these days. Almost never, to be honest. The last time I had anything to drink was February. I just fancied a whiskey, and it really did go down a treat. I was very, very much in the mood for it. And you notice when I've been touching up this blue armour, I've not been too worried about exactly colour matching the blue. That might look a bit weird at this stage, but it's going to all make sense a little bit later on in the workup, so if you were wondering about that, why I haven't been colour matching the blue very much, then all will be revealed, I assure you. Oh wow, really? Fuck me. So what, summer of the year before last? That was a fucking different time, wasn't it? So much has changed since then. Crazy. I don't even feel like the same person I was back then. I honestly don't. Oh shit. Actually, no, that's getting painted black anyway, so it doesn't matter. I was like, oh shit, I didn't want to get silver in there, and then I realised that I'm painting that in blacks shortly anyway. So it doesn't matter. think on the blade itself, just the top casing probably wants to be silver. I don't think anything else needs to be. Hangover wheel on the balcony. Oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, back when we used to smoke on the balcony, because that was before I vaped. We didn't want to smoke in the flat. So we used to all go onto the balcony to smoke. That was actually pretty impressive because it wasn't a case of we couldn't smoke in the flat. It was a case of we didn't want to smoke in the flat. So the fact that we actually maintained our discipline and almost always smoked on the balcony, we almost never smoked in the flat. It's actually pretty impressive. It was an owned property, that flat. It wasn't one of the people that lived there actually owned it. It wasn't a rented property. Again, I don't really need to be careful around this blade either because it's going to get painted out before I do anything with it. I'm just kind of being careful because I'm weird. That's something I've really got to get better at, actually. That's one of my big painting level ups that I need to hit is remembering not to paint too carefully when I don't need to, because it slows you down, and obviously anything that slows you down is bringing you closer to boredom, and the point that you start to get bored is the point that you're going to want to put the brush down for the day. So, you know, so all that efficiency kind of deal. You just want to be making sure that you're painting with, you know, some sort of regard toward efficiency. I think it was only when it rained particularly bad. Yeah. Nerdvana. Yeah, we just used to sit around the dining table playing Magic, painting miniatures, shit like that. It was an alright time. It's an interesting one, that, because, you know, it was during both a very good and a very bad part of my life. So I sort of look back on it both fondly and, you know, also with a degree of sort of, ooh. There we go. Alright, so black is the next colour to get in this area, so we'll non-oil this and put it to one side. In fact, I might even be able to non-oil this and then fix it to the body. Might actually be able to fix it to the body, because I don't think there's anything else on the inside of it to paint other than like these black cables here, which I'll still be able to get at those. So yeah, so I think what we'll do, we'll let this silver dry thoroughly, then we'll non-oil that area, and then I can actually fix that arm to the body, which will be nice. It'll be another part tied up. Then we'll do the other arm, fix that to the body, and then we'll start to tackle things like parchments and that sort of thing. I don't think this is going to be like a super lengthy stream, though. I will say that. Like, I don't think I'm going to sit here for like 5 hours like I used to on Twitch or anything. I think, you know, just kind of a little bit of chill painting and chatting time. And, you know, I think to me something like this, where I'm just kind of painting on my day off and hanging out with you folks, it's more about just wanting to chat with you folks, you know, the people that watch my content and that I talk to on social media. Like, it's kind of wanting to get some hangout time with you folks mostly. So I only really want these streams to be however long they need to be for you folks to enjoy that. You know, when we reach a point where you guys kind of run out of stuff that you want to chat about, then that's probably a good indicator that the video has gone on for long enough, I think. Got my bothersome butterfly friend back outside the window. Right. We should be thoroughly dry now, so let's go back to non-oil. Whoa, that's modern Earth. that was nearly a tragedy. Fuck, don't put your modern Earth and your non-oil beside each other, kids. Bad things can happen. Bad things can happen. Holy shit, that would have been really funny if I'd have just lathered a load of modern Earth over this miniature. Y'all have been sat there at home laughing at me. I know what you're like. I know how you be. Look at this fucking idiot. Hey, dickhead. Hey, that's okay. I like there to be an element of comedy to my content. I think, you know, it's a good thing to have as a content creator. So I guess if that happens to be comedy at my own expense, it's not the end of the world, is it? It's funny, you know, I always used to feel like I'd do anything to avoid using known oil for quite a long time. I went through this real anti-known oil phase where near tragedy, yeah. It could have been bad, Baldy. It could have been bad, mate. Yeah, I went through this long phase where I really avoided using it, and I think a lot of that is just because of the memes. You know, I was maybe a little bit. I lacked the self-confidence as a painter, so when everybody was kind of taking the piss out of it, and the memes were really popular about it being like liquid skill or, you know, free skill, I sort of made a point of like, oh, you better not use that. You know, people think you're a lazy painter, or people think you're, you know, not a very good painter, and it's so silly. So silly to tell yourself that. Actually, to be honest with you, I fucking love known oil. I love known oil. And one of my patrons, Maddie, she's a huge fan of known oil. We've sort of developed a bit of an in-joke between us now where it's very difficult for us to actually have a conversation where known oil doesn't come up. It's quite funny. It's a shame that we do that to ourselves, isn't it? You know, that our lack of confidence tells us that we shouldn't use a particular tool because people will think worse of us. It's like, it's a tool. We should use every tool at our disposal, you know. Painting's supposed to be fun. We ain't doing this as a fucking prison sentence. We're doing this because we apparently enjoy it. So we should act like it. That's been the big secret for me recently, is learning to actually enjoy my work, you know, learning to find the pleasure in my work. It's so nice to be able to do this for a living and, you know, not ever have a day where I don't want to turn up to work anymore. Like, I've done some shit jobs over the years. Yeah, I do need to get some dropper bottles, to be fair. You're actually completely right about that. I do need to do some dropper bottle decanting. Dry brushing models, bases are okay and some texture, it just seems lazy to me. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but this is dry brushed. Like, does it look shit? All that blue is dry brushed. That like front heavy highlight that I've done, it's all with dry brushing. Does it look shit? Like, because at the end of the day, like, if it looks shit and it's lazy, then obviously don't do it. But if it's lazy and it looks good, fucking do it because it looks good. If you can spend less time on a thing and it still look good, that's strictly a good thing. That is only a positive. you know, the less time that you get to spend on one thing is the more time that you then have to spend doing something that's more fun and more interesting to you. The big secret for me with dry brushing, if I'm honest, makeup brushes. These are cheap Primark makeup brushes, and they're just so fluffy. Like this is a smushing brush from Rosemary & Co, which is also designed for dry brushing, and like it's got a pretty stiff synthetic hog bristle, whereas this has got like a really soft synthetic horse bristle, and it's just so fluffy and airy, and when you dry brush with it, it's just like wafting a cloud of loveliness over your miniature. It's just so easy. So easy. But maybe that is the thing, is, you know, maybe with dry brushing, it's just that there are a lot of examples of like quite rushed dry brushing, you know? That might be what kind of creates stigma around dry brushing. That might be what, maybe what turns people off of it. Because at the end of the day, if we see a lot of examples of bad dry brushing, then obviously the connection in our heads is going to be this is both a quick and not very good technique, right? So you can absolutely understand why people might start to form those kinds of opinions of the technique based on that. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of patience required, and a little bit of... You need to understand how to do that really gentle final dry brush. It's not the first couple, the sort of heavy ones at the start, where you're sort of setting the pace for the other stuff. They're pretty simple, they're pretty straightforward. It's as you get towards the end of the dry brush run, when you get to those really fluffy little gentle, you know, little pixie fart kind of strokes where you're just being careful to really be gentle. When you start to do that kind of dry brushing, it's a bit harder, and it's a bit more intense, and it requires a bit more concentration, a bit more consideration. And so it's, you know, it's easy to fuck that up, and if you do, then you're going to be left with another example of not great dry brushing, and then you're going to say, well, dry brushing's clearly a shit technique then. It's just, you know, it's not the case, but I totally get why people end up leaning that way. On the other side of that, though, like there's an opposite side of that in the we all know that there is a company at the moment who are trying to like reinvent dry brushing. We've all seen, you know, what they're doing. And they sort of try to claim that it is just as good as traditional blending and doesn't take as long. And then every time they show a demonstration of it, it takes way longer than traditional blending. You know, so like the reason I'm saying that is because, you know, it goes back to sort of a very important tenet of my painting, which is, you know, we have to remember to be careful not to bullshit ourselves. We have to be careful to remember to be honest with ourselves, and, you know, don't tell yourself that something's faster and more efficient just because you prefer it. Just admit that you prefer it. You're allowed to just prefer something, you know. But obviously this is a company that sells dry brushes, and you're not going to sell dry brushes to people on the premise of we prefer them. You know, you need to try and persuade people that it's somehow better. So that's kind of what the whole angle is at the moment. Do you use any kind of moisture for dry brushing? Sometimes a little. What I'll do is, so this is my main makeup brush that I tend to dry brush with. This is a medium pencil and powder smudge brush. And at the moment it needs a bit of a clean. But what I'll sometimes do with this is very similarly to how Artist Opus does, is I'll put a little drop of water down using the back of the brush like that. And then I'll sort of dab my paint on it. And then I'll just kind of tease a little bit of water in like that. And I use the paper because the paper just lets a thin film of water spread, and you can just kind of get all the bristles just a tiny bit damp instead of Like this still feels dry when I touch it, but we can see that there's water going onto it. You know, we're doing it, like it's right here. We're watching it happen. So we know that there's a bit of water in there, which is going to just help that paint travel a little, but it still feels dry and it's still going to act like a dry brush. I've got a video coming up soon where I'm going to paint a tank using a mixture of panel modulation and dry brushing. I haven't actually started recording the footage for it yet, but when I do, you're going to see an example of that. You're going to see a mixture of, but applying water off of a sponge into a dry brush, I don't think is a great idea, personally. Just because the capillary action sort of pulls the water right up into the heel of the dry brush here, and subsequently into the center of the bristles as well, which are the areas where it's really hard to then get the paint back out of. What do you struggle with, Mikey? The chatting, by the way, is because this is still drying. Until it's dry, I can't sort of offer it up to the miniature and glue it and everything, so there's no point in moving on to the next bit. We may as well have a chat for a few minutes. Yeah, what are you struggling with dry brushing, buddy? I'll try and help you. Always happy to answer questions. That's one of my favorite things to do. Love answering questions. Patchiness in dry brushing. Probably just jumping your colors forward too quickly. Like the steps in your gradients being too wide. You know, like you can't do what you do with Games Workshop, where like with like a traditional Games Workshop workup where you'd go like base layer highlight with those three paints, right? Like that as a normal traditional Games Workshop workup would work fine if you're just going to sort of base coat, thick edge highlight, fine edge highlight. Yeah, that would obviously work fine. You know, those three colors are like in a really good position to each other to achieve that, right? We can all understand that. If you're dry brushing, what you want to do is put some of this down, dry brush with it, say over black or whatever, then put some of this down, but you're going to want to dab into both of these first of all and do another dry brush. Then dab into just this and do another dry brush. Then mix this and do another dry brush. And then just this and do your final dry brush. And then you still might want to do something brighter than this. Maybe get an ivory and mix like an ivory with this and do like a really fine corner dry brush just on the extremities. You have to be willing to build up those dry brushes a lot slower when it comes to working with things like that, because that patchiness, it's gonna really show as soon as you jump up in color too much. It's it's the nature of the technique. So probably all you're doing there is probably just skipping too far ahead in the as you're stepping up into your highlights. I used to do my Space Wars eons ago. I was always dead happy with how it looks now. But yeah, it could also just be that as you're older, you're more experienced. You're asking yourself for a higher standard of work. That is possible, and that's a good thing. That means you become a better painter, right? So don't mourn that. Don't be upset by that. Be happy. All right. I think what I'm going to do is mute my mic for a second, folks, and just hairdryer this quickly, because I want to move on, and obviously we're stuck waiting, so. See, takes a second. Hairdryer is one of my favorite tools in my arsenal. Alright, we can now glue this into place, which is probably a good thing. After I persuade my plastic glue to start working again. Come on, plastic glue. There it is. Obviously, you know, you can just push fit these if you'd rather keep them posable, but I'm more the kind of person who likes to just sort of find a pose that I like and leave it like that. It's just more my style personally. So, you know, we're starting to get somewhere now. Starting to get somewhere. To my Viejo arrives, I'm working with minimal amounts of colours and shades. But mix then, you know, mix. Use an off-white and just lighten by progressively adding off-white. That's my best advice when you're in that situation. Don't be afraid to mix. People really have a lot of apprehension surrounding colour mixing. To do with like staying consistent for an entire army and stuff. And don't get me wrong, if you're mixing like your main base colours, then yes, by the time you get to the end of an entire army, you're probably going to start to see some inconsistencies, and that's probably going to bug you. So it might not be the best of ideas. But when we're talking about just mixing your highlight colors and shit, they really don't need to be identical miniature to miniature. It's not going to look like really stand out wrong if you know, if the highlights that you've dry brushed onto the power armor are not exactly the same from miniature to miniature. So don't be afraid. You know, just mix. It's not gonna cause you any bother that you can't very easily fix. That would be my advice there. And it's almost a bit bizarre to me that mixing is so frowned upon these days. I find that very strange, to be honest with you. Like, we want our armies to be unique, but we also tell each other that we shouldn't be mixing our paints. Yeah, my Blood Angels workup, for example, looks nothing like GW's Blood Angels workup, but I still like it. And I mean when I'm actually painting like Codex Blood Angels, not my successors. Obviously, this, you know, what I'm painting right now is for my successors, so it's not supposed to look like Blood Angels. That's why it's fucking blue for a start. But at the end of the day, the guiding star is not if it looks like the picture, it's if you like what it looks like. And it can sometimes take a little time to, you know, persuade yourself of that. But you have to learn to love your own creativity as much as the creativity of others. It's very hard to look with pride and passion upon something you created in the same way that you would upon something someone else created. You know, that's not an easy thing to do. I'm definitely not a shining example of someone that's good at that. I often sort of look at something I've painted and I'm like, oh, this looks fucking garbage compared to like what, you know, X or Y painter that I love put out this week. But that's the human condition. That isn't your painting. That is your brain refusing to let you acknowledge when you've done well, and it's just a thing that you sometimes do, especially as a creative person. You know, it's a particularly difficult thing for creative people to like the things that they create, but you know, at the end of the day, you are never going to be your favorite painter. I look at Rich Gray's work and I adore it. You know, he's probably my favorite painter. And I look at his work and I'm like, never once have I said to myself, I wish I could paint like that. because I don't want to paint like Rich Gray. I want to paint like me at my best. But what I do often do is look at Rich Gray's work and say, I wish that I had his mastery of light, for example. And the guy really is, you know, by the very strictest use of the word, a master when it comes to the understanding of light and how it interacts with 3D objects. He is thoroughly masterful in his execution. No one can take that away from him. But that, you know, that doesn't mean that I should be trying to imitate him. I should be trying to emulate him by all means. I should feel good if his work inspires me and makes me better as a painter, of course. But I would never want to try and, you know, copy one of his pieces or be him. I'll tell you what, it's one of the reasons why I started to get out of 2D painting, was because obviously altering magic cards was what I used to do, and I still do it, but I just do a lot less of it now. But one of the things that I really hated, was that, like, you'd talk to a customer about what they wanted, you know, and they say, like, I want this character from my favorite movie on this card. And I'd be like, okay, that's cool, yeah, that's brilliant. You know, how much sort of artistic freedom are you happy for me to have with this? You know, how much are you happy for me to kind of do my own thing with it? And, you know, most of the time, like, most customers that are willing to spend, you know, 3-figure sums buying art from you are generally pretty happy for you to also have creative freedom, funny enough. You know, if they trust you enough to be spending that kind of money with you, they also trust you enough to create something that they're going to like, which is why they're fucking hiring you. And so, you know, the majority of the time the customer would be like, yeah, you know, you do you, man. Like, take your own approach on it. Do what you want to do with it. And you do it and you paint it, and they would love it. Because it's exactly what they asked for, you know. It was your interpretation of a thing that they really love. And so they're really happy to see it completed, and they're appreciative of it, and they praise you for it. You know, and then, like, either yourself or they would post it to social media and no one would give a shit. And the reason no one would give a shit is because what they wanted to see in that kind of art, what they wanted to see was perfect copies of their favorite manga or their favorite meme or stuff like that. And when you did that, you'd get all the praise in the world, you know, you were like their guy, and, oh, I'm such a fan of your work, you know, and it's like, it's nice to hear. Of course it's nice to hear. It's a wonderful feeling, but the difference is that it's kind of hollow, because they're not really a fan of your work. They're a fan of your willingness to paint memes on Magic the Gathering cards, or your willingness to just carbon copy things that they like. So it's not your work that they're a fan of. It's the thing that you've carbon copied, or the meme that you've chosen to base your work on, or whatever, that they're a fan of. And, you know, after 8 years of doing that job, I started to feel kind of quite hurt by that almost, you know, quite sort of, why is my creativity not good enough? You know, why is my creativity not deserving of respect? Why is it the only time I get praise is when I paint a version of the latest trending meme on a Magic card, or or I do a carbon copy of an existing thing. Not a carbon copy. I was always the person that would kind of hide some changes in there, even if I wasn't expressly given the permission to do them, you know, because it's just, I don't like to carbon copy things. And that's kind of so different when you step into the world of Warhammer, because it's entirely your creativity that people praise when it comes to Warhammer, you know. It's entirely your passion and your interpretation of, you know, all the miniatures look the same until we paint them, right? And so the exact thing that people love and admire and are interested in is how you've interpreted that thing. You know, they've seen that miniature before, but if you do something with it that they haven't seen before, they love that. You know, people in general, I'm talking about, that's what I mean by they, Warhammer fans in general. And that does not exist in the world of Magic the Gathering alteration. And that's, for the largest part, why I've been stepping away from it, and why I now take very, very minimal commissions. The only commissions I really take now are basically the original styles that I like doing. I like doing black and white portraiture, and I like doing those like ancient kind of Asian inspired scrolls that you've probably seen on my social media. I really like doing both of those things, and that's pretty much the only commissions I take now. Hey Falcon Nomad, how you doing? Thanks for being here. But yeah, it's just, you know, that satisfaction of knowing that how you interpreted a thing is what people appreciate. Like, that's worth so much. That's worth so much to a creative person, to be made to feel like their creativity has captured someone's imagination and inspired them. And in my old job, it was completely missing, and that's really where this whole career change is born from. Is, you know, I realized that I was pumping all of my energy and passion and time and money and effort into a career path that not only wasn't rewarding for me, but was never gonna be rewarding for me. And, you know, ultimately, no amount of being good at a thing is worth not enjoying doing it. If you don't get to go to work and enjoy your job, that's a very good reason to not do that job. And so, you know, once that started to become clear to me, I started to realize that I needed to reshuffle and, you know, rearrange my career. And so here we are now, you know, where like, it's a big change. I changed a lot of things all at the same time. And so obviously, you know, it was always going to take a little bit of a while to start to roll and do something again. And, you know, as it stands right now, I don't make as much money as I used to doing that job. No, but between the mini painting commissions that I get, the small number of Magic the Gathering commissions that I still accept, and the money that I get from Patreon, you know, I'm getting by, and I'm happy. And God, being happy is such a huge change. It's like to go from 8 years as an amateur and 2 years as a professional in a career that you do not enjoy, starting to turn up to work every day and love it and be happy and enjoy it. Hugely powerful, especially for your self-esteem. And it's really changed my life. And so, you know, you'll quite often, when you interact with me on Twitter, you'll quite often hear me say the phrase, you know, this community has saved me. And that's what I mean when I say it. You know, that's what I mean, is finding a home where my creativity matters and I can help people. I can actually help people. Gave me a way out from, you know, a cycle that was damaging and defeating and very negative and very sad and very, you know, not a great place to find yourself. And that's like, that's pretty huge for, you know, for how it, an effect that it has on your life, you know. And to now get to be happy at work every day and enjoying my job is just like, it's fucking rad. You know, people who were close to me prior to these changes have almost all remarked on how much happier I seem and how, you know, how much it seems to be helping me. It's pretty crazy the difference it makes to one's life. So, getting back to practical stuff for a minute. This is something I just want to show you folks. I'll try and put it in the shade here. So this is the water that I've been washing my brush with when I've been using these metallics. And I've washed my brush probably 4 times at a guess. And each time when I load my brush, I load about that much paint onto it. So if you ever wonder just how much metallics can pollute your water, this is how much metallics can pollute your water. The effect that they can have is huge, and you don't notice how pronounced it is until you actually start to use a dedicated water for cleaning your metallics. And actually, like, even my main water pot, if I shift this again and bring my main water pot into shot, and then you see metallic flake floating in it. You can see it there on the super zoom. Got all that metallic flake in the surface there. Isn't that crazy? And so this is not my main water pot. I'm washing my brush in that other pot of water. This is just what it's picking up that I haven't managed to get out of the brush. That's just the inefficiency metallic flake. That's just the metallic flake that comes from the inefficiency of my brush washing. Isn't that crazy? Like, how much of an effect it has. People claim to not realize the difference or not notice the difference, and I honestly, it blows my mind that people would even make that claim. I don't see how it's possible to not notice the difference. Another wet palette with metallics thing, that's a very different story. That is bollocks. That is just straight up bollocks. You can use metallics on a wet palette if you wish to. Personally, I don't, because I find that they go gummy quicker on my wet palette. I find that they start to develop a film quicker on my wet palette. That's why I don't use my metallics on a wet palette. That's why I use these little cups when I'm painting with metallics. But you absolutely can put them on your wet palette. They will do absolutely no harm to your other colours. They'll do no harm at all. And quite often, if I'm painting with GW metallics, which is rare these days, but I do still sometimes do it, yeah, absolutely put them on a wet palette. No problem. No problem. Have a great time with them. Right, we're back to known oil. It should be dry enough to wash onto. Just giving it a quick visual exam, as it were. It should be dry enough now. Once again, like I say, I'm not seeking to finish this today. This isn't going to be a stream where we get a miniature finished from start to finish. Just wanted to spend a bit of time with you beautiful folks, you know. Twitter especially, Warhammer Twitter has been so kind to me lately. Really just wanted to take a bit of time out and hang out with you folks, you know. In a post-corona world, we may be able to get together at Warhammer World and play games and, you know, have a coffee, and that'll be a really nice time. But at the moment, this is how we hang out, you know. Things like live streams this is how we connect with people right now. So, just wanted to spend a bit of time with y'all and do something there. And this has been nice. I should probably thank those of you that are watching, those of you that have been watching. Thank you very much. It's been really lovely. It's for someone who, you know, doesn't massively love streaming, I'll be honest. A lot of you know that already. I don't really like streaming. But as an occasional thing to do now and again, as an opportunity to hang out with nice people and chat about hobby and stuff. It's a pretty great thing. So, you know, to come on for a stream and have a nice time, and for you to show up and ask some questions and have a little chat. You know, that makes me feel like it's a thing that I'll probably do again every so often. I'm not going to stream regularly again. I think everyone knows that. Everyone that follows me, you know, fairly closely knows that I'm never going to stream regularly again. It's not my world. But this definitely won't be the last time that I just sort of fire up a random stream just to hang out with nice people, because it is really lovely. It is really lovely. There is something just very rewarding about, you know, just sitting down and painting and chatting bollocks. Right, excuse me for another second, folks. I'm going to mute the mic a minute again and just hairdryer this. Okay, and we're back. Now that that's dry, we get the second arm on as well, and then we'll be able to start to get a bit more of an idea of, because things like the black parts and the red parts and all that sort of thing are pretty straightforward. So, like, now that I've actually got an idea of the pose overall, it's a lot easier for me to start kind of balancing things now, where I put those accent colors and stuff. Which is why I always say with sub-assembling, and I genuinely feel that this rule is pretty much universal. If you want to work in sub-assemblies for the sake of making the painting easier, less stressful, more achievable, that kind of thing, then you should. You absolutely should, because there's nothing in the world that's worse than just struggling with something that you know feel should be straightforward. That isn't satisfying. It isn't enjoyable. No one wants to do it. No one wants to deal with that. So absolutely do sub-assemble for the sake of making your life as a painter easier. 100% do that. Definitely do that. But on the other side of that, the more you sub-assemble, the harder it is to visualize how each thing you do on the miniature is affecting everything else on the miniature. You need the context of having everything assembled to be able to see how much of an effect certain things are having on what you're doing overall, okay? So what I always say is start off sub-assembled, paint all of the hard to reach shit first, like the reason you sub-assembled in the first place, do all of that, but then once that's done, assemble and finish the painting assembled, because as soon as you assemble, you now have context and you can look at each area as you paint it and say, how does doing this or that affect the other things around this part that I'm about to paint? And by doing that, you then allow yourself to have these miniatures that look more complete and more cohesive. And quite often, one of the things that is a good way to spot a fairly like beginner painter is quite often when they have stuff that isn't cohesive in their miniatures. You know, they'll do like a really bright top-down highlight on the main sub-assembly and then forget to put it on like the arm that they glued on later, and so the arm is lit completely differently and stuff like that. And it really shows, you know, it really notices. But like, look here, like this light, is the lighting is right at the exact coherent angle with the lighting here and here. All of these fades look like a light is coming at it from this direction. Boop. I hate subassembly. To fit later all the painted parts makes my hand shake. Yeah, I definitely like to get them assembled as quick as I can. As quick as I can. And you know, some stuff you just can't, like this asshole, for example. I hate these. I was running 6 in my army and I'm now only running 3 because the idea of having to paint 6 of these things, like you can't paint these in sub-assemblies. The miniature literally can't be put together in sub-assemblies. And so you have to just cope with reaching all of the nooks and crannies. And that is not fun. That is not fun. Right. So I think chop those outriders up a bit so I can paint them out. Oh, that's a clever idea. Yeah. If you're willing to do that, that's a good way around it. Let's get the old wet palette open now. I get asked about my wet palette quite a lot, like which one I use and you know how I use it, stuff that I recommend with wet palettes, that kind of thing. My wet palette is kind of a custom wet palette and kind of not. So I use while I'm getting rid of all the surface deposits, I'll just pop it on camera for a second. You can see me working on this in a minute. This is just me preparing it ready for use. This is something that you should do. Every time you prepare a fresh wet palette, you should just sweep over the surface with something flat to get any little globs of water off of the surface, because those little globs of water will overthin your paint. Obviously, you want to be in control of that, not the tools that you work with. But this wet palette basically it's a Frisk wet palette, but with cellulose sponges underneath. Frisk's top paper for their wet palette, I really love it. I think it's brilliant, personally. It's worked way better for me than Redgrass, Army Painter, baking paper, all of those other solutions. The Frisk top paper has been wonderful for me, and I've tried a lot of different solutions. But the bottom sponge that comes with the Frisk palette is terrible. It's basically just a thick sheet of blotting paper. Oh, you like my Predator t-shirt? Thanks. Hey TJ, how you doing, buddy? So instead of using the bottom paper that is terrible, I use some Swedish sponges, cellulose sponges, and I find those really, really good. This is just some Xandri dust that I'm loading up onto my palette. I'm just going to start painting in all of the cloth and bone on this. And I find those to be absolutely brilliant. They retain enough water to keep your palette usable for about 3 or 4 days at a time, which is about what I want, really. Because I'm never going to get more than 3 or 4 days out of a piece of top paper anyway. So I only need my bottom sponges to keep it hydrated for as long as I might be able to actually actively use it. And to be honest, I normally only get like 2 days out of a top paper, but yeah, wet palettes they're a very divisive thing in the mini painting community. And a lot of that, to be honest with you, a lot of that is because the mini painting community hasn't been using wet palettes for that long. But the traditional painters out there have been using them for a very long time. And so mini painters don't really have the same amount of knowledge gained through experience. And so a lot of the time they kind of can be a bit face value when it comes to wet palette stuff. They don't really understand why one thing might work better than another. So there's quite a lot of misinformation is what I'm getting at when it comes to wet palettes. And as a result of that misinformation, there's quite a lot of bad recommendations. And so wet palettes can be quite frustrating for mini painters to look into. They can be quite misleading in the approach that you should take. Different palettes are going to work well for different painting scenarios. Humidity has a big effect on wet palettes. Basically, the key thing to note with a wet palette, as far as I'm concerned at least, as far as my experience has taught me, is that you want a palette that retains moisture in its bottom layer for as long as possible. That's the main important thing. And the reason that that's the main important thing is because, like, for example, top paper, right? If you don't like the top paper that like comes with your palette, cutting a different top paper to size isn't particularly tricky. But like, do you really want to be cutting up, like, you know, like the cellulose sponges that come with the red grass one, for example, that are like £5 or something? I think they're about £5 each. Like, do you want to be cutting up a fucking £5 cellulose sponge for your wet palette? If you like, say if you liked that red grass one, but it didn't fit the palette you were using, like, you don't really want to be doing that, you know? Yeah, the top paper for the red grass one is very poor. It creates these little like furry bubbles when you scrub on it, and one of the things that you'll really notice as you become more experienced as a painter is that you'll scrub with your brush a lot more. Scrubbing is where you do this. It's where you use the heel of your brush. You don't tend to do it on your actual miniature that often, but you do it on your palette a lot. And when you scrub on the red grass top paper, it turns bobbly and furry and deposits these little particles into your paint, which then transfer to the miniature, which is obviously like really shit, really shit. So that's why I stopped using the red grass one. I've got one. It's literally like over there. I can see it from here. But I don't use it because I don't like the top paper. And for my level of humidity, the bottom sponge, or heat, for the heat humidity sort of combination in my painting room, the bottom sponge doesn't really stay wet long enough. So the red grass one wasn't right for me. And I kind of think, considering it's one of the more expensive, that palette in particular, like, it has to be right for you in order for you to justify its cost. If there's anything not satisfying about using that palette, if there's anything that you don't like about using that palette, then when it's that expensive, that's a problem. On the opposite end of the scale, the other one that I'm really not keen on is the homemade wet palette using tissue. Kitchen towel like this is really not a good bottom material to be using for your wet palette. It fucking loves bacteria. It absolutely loves bacteria. If you want a meaty smelling wet palette that like literally smells like fucking wind of pork chop every time you open it, be my guest. And you can solve that issue by leaving your wet palette a crack open, and then there's not as much humidity in there overnight, so bacteria can't multiply as quickly. But when you're using tissue paper, it dries out really quickly if you do that. And I also like baking paper it's so fucking varied how permeable baking paper is so varied, because it's not designed for that job. It's not designed to keep paint and water separate from each other. It's designed to stop things sticking. And baking paper is a semi-permeable membrane. But most brands of baking paper tend to be too water-fast, too watertight, for really to make good wet palette paper. And so I don't really like how people are like so quick to suggest the homemade wet palette. Oh, you'll save a fortune, just use a homemade one. It's a fucking waste of money to buy a pre-made one. It's like, stop it. Because as someone who's new to using a wet palette, if you don't have experience with using a wet palette, you don't know what to look for in sponges, in top paper. You don't know what's going to help you, what's going to hinder you. So making a homemade one is like the least guided version of using a wet palette. You've got the least hand-holding going on there, which means you've got the most opportunity to choose a material that doesn't work very well and then struggle with it and not know what's causing the struggle, and then have a bad experience with a wet palette, and then be left with the false impression that wet palettes aren't good, right? So you see, you can understand my sort of line of my train of thought in this process. So yeah, the two things that I tend to always not recommend to people are the red grass palette and the homemade palette. Yeah, I've heard similar complaints to that before, Victor. I've heard similar complaints to that before. I don't think the paper's very good with the red grass one. I think they need to put a bit more research into it, and they probably will. You know, red grass they're starting to do pretty well as a gaming accessories company. They probably will put a bit more time and research into it, and they probably will improve it. So it's not really, not really a worry. Some people say it's more meant for heavy body acrylics. No idea if that's just buzz language though. That doesn't sound likely to me. Heavy body acrylics crust over quite quickly on the top anyway, no matter what palette you put them on. Like even my Scale 75 heavy bodies that I use quite a lot will crust over on the top even with the lid on. So I don't see that a drier paper would help heavy bodies more. A paper that's less hydrating would help heavy bodies more. That sounds like fans trying to make excuses, which is a thing that happens. Like people love stuff, and so they try to defend it, even though they don't really have a factual basis for their defense. They just don't want to see the thing that they like being spoken badly of. Which is, I get it. Something outside my window just made a right funny noise. I don't know what it was, but sure did sound strange. That's going to want a second coat. Zandri Dust is a strange old colour. It covers some stuff so well and covers other stuff really poorly. Blue is one of the colours that it doesn't cover so well. I suppose it does make sense when you think about it, because blue's a cold tone. It's going to show up through a warm tone much more, I suppose, but it's always something I've always noticed with Zandri Dust. It is a great paint, though. Fucking congratulations to Games Workshop for inventing Zandri Dust. Like, probably two of the biggest triumphs in GW's history, in terms of, like, product inventions, would be Nuln Oil and Zandri Dust, honestly. They are two paints that really help people, like, really, really help people. Okay, yeah, just need to wait for that to dry again, so I can put a second coat in it. I need to touch up a few areas of this as well. Oh, and I suppose we should put some on the actual purity seals as well. These purity seals on this Dreadnought are a little bit annoying. They're like wrinkled, so you can't actually paint any text on them, which kind of sucks because I really like painting text on purity seals. Sucks for me, like it doesn't suck, you know, from a design perspective, just from a preference perspective. I like painting text on them. But I suppose I do get this big parchment here to do something on. I don't know what I'm going to do on it yet. That won't be happening today either way, so it doesn't really matter. Purity Seal's bones. Yeah, that's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. It's just such a universal colour. Like, my cloth workups always start with it. My bone workups always start with it. You know, there'll be different shade and highlight methods that come after it, but it is just, yeah, it's just like a base coat for so many things. I even once, when Tau first came out, which was either 4th or 5th edition, I can't remember which one, either 4th or 5th. But when Tau first came out, I had a Tau army. My entire army was Zandri Dust, which was a new paint back then. And whatever Rhinox Hide now was called back then, it was the same brown, but I don't think it was called Rhinox Hide back then. I think it was called something else back then. You know, like how Nuln Oil was called Badab Black back then. It's obviously not called Badab Black now, but that's what it was called back then. And Agrax Earthshade had a different name back then as well. And they're the same product, they just updated the names to suit the other stuff that they do. Yeah, it's real good shit. I'm glad that everyone agrees. Glad that everyone in the chat agrees. That's an interesting question, actually, chat. Let me ask you a question for once. What are your top 3 GW paints? Anyone that fancies answering, let me know. Let me know, what are your top 3 GW paints? I'd be interested to see how much commonality there is in the responses, like how many, you know, consensus winners there are. Scorched Brown, is that what it used to be called? Your memory's better than mine. Yeah, Zandri Dust and Scorched Brown, that was my Tau army. Now that I think back on it, it was such a fucking dull colour scheme. But I remember I really enjoyed painting it back then. Like this Desert Tau. Nobody really had started calling them fish back then though, so... Or cow chicken fish, as I like to call them. Alright, that's those areas. And then I'll also get the blacks done today. That'll give me a good position to start kicking some ass on it. Alright, let's see some of these answers starting to come in. Zandri Celestra Drakenhof. Nice. I love Drakenhof Nightshade. Xandri, Celestra, Mephiston. That's another good shout. I really love Mephiston. Mephiston, Xandri, Celestra. What's interesting, really interesting here is that everyone's naming base paints and shades. Is the consensus that GW's layer paints are just like one of their weaker products? Do we just think that their layer paints are not great? Because the shades and the shades and the base paints seem to always be very popular with people. Sneal's posting photos of their Achilles Ridge Runner in my Discord right now. If you're not in my Discord right now, you can go to. I think most of the people watching this are in my Discord, but if you're not, you can go to this link and you can sign up for like $1 a month, which is nothing. And Discord, amongst other benefits you will get, there's like so much miniature painting inspiration in my Discord at the moment. It's like it literally keeps me inspired every day, and I'm supposed to be the one providing the inspiration. But yeah, Sneal's posting their Achilles Ridge Runner at the moment, and it's just you love to see it, don't you? You just love to see it, you know, just cars. Yeah, the reds are good. I agree with that. I really like Wild Rider, and I really like the other one that's basically an orange, like a reddy orange. The one that's like the next step on from Wild Rider, not Fire Dragon. Before that. Oh, the Cyberite, Cabalite, and Gorse Blaster. Is it those ones? Yeah, that could be a thing, Fonzie. That could definitely be a thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very reasonable point, actually. You can kind of pick anything when it comes to their layer paints and it'll do the same job. Ooh, Fraser's posted their competition piece as well. Ooh, it is exciting stuff. I think that's one of the areas that Vallejo really wins in. It's by being cheaper than pretty much everything else. This is the black that I always use, by the way. I fucking love this stuff so much. It's so good. Yeah, I think that's one of the areas Vallejo really wins in, actually, is by being sort of comparable in quality to any high quality miniature paint brand. Like, they're not noticeably behind any of the competition at all, but they are cheaper than most of the competition. Right, stuff that needs to be black. I'm gonna go with the tips of the claws. Oh. Hate having to paint stuff on the base, but don't really have a hobby holder that's suitable for a 60mm base, so I'll suffer it. Not the end of the world. Look at the coverage of this black when it's this, like, even when it's this thin though, it's just ridiculous. Like, look how thin it is. And it just covers so well. Necro Gold is ace. Yeah, I really like Necro Gold. Yeah, Army Painter didn't do it for me. Army Painter to me felt like cheap paint. It's like, it is cheap, but it feels cheap to me, like it behaves cheaply to me. And, you know, for me, like, if something's winning on grounds of being cheap, it's winning because it's as good as the more expensive competition. There's no point in buying something that's cheap and it being worse. Like, I don't see how that really helps anyone. So I don't tend to praise cheapness unless it comes coupled with impressive performance, which is one of the things actually that really caught my attention with these Scale 75 artist acrylics that I've started to use more and more of. Because they're actually cheap. They're $3.75 for a 20mm tube. So a GW pot is 12mm, so they're not far off of double a GW pot. A Vallejo pot is 17mm, a Reaper pot is 15mm, and a Scale 75 pot is 17mm. Scale 75 and Vallejo are both 17. So you get in more paint than any other brand, but in terms of price, you're only paying about 75p more than what you'd pay for. I mean, your average pot of paint is $3 to $3.50, to be fair. So you're not even paying 75p more in a lot of cases. Because a lot of paint pots these days you'll pay $3.50 for. GW, obviously, you tend to pay about $2.50 for a 12mm GW, but you should be paying $2.50 because you're getting about 5mm less paint than you would normally expect. So GW paints should be cheaper per pot because they contain less paint. And it wouldn't surprise me if they go up again at some point and don't get bigger. So that's a thing to consider with GW paints. That said, I mean, I've started using a lot more GW lately. I've actually started bringing GW a lot more back into my work recently. Because it's what people prefer to see you paint with because they know that they have it. You know, it used to frustrate me, but it actually doesn't frustrate me anymore. I'm really quite fine with it now. Are any of you guys play with Pro Acryl? Yeah, Pro Acryl is. I have a lot of friends who swear by it. I've just never got around to giving it a go. But I love the finish of it. It's like a hyper matte, much like the Scale 75 artist acrylic, which is what I really like. I love hyper matte paint. I'll deliberately satin off certain stuff if I need it to be brighter, but I'm a big fan of hyper matte paint. And yeah, Pro Acryl is very much in that region. It's a paint that I really want to get around to trying at some point, and Chimera as well, but Chimera is just exclusive. It's just very hard to get hold of. Obviously you can order it on the internet, but the shipping time and cost is quite pricey, quite high. Am I still in shot here? Yeah, I am, just about. Good. It's tricky when you're live, because obviously when I'm doing this for tutorials, I only have to paint in shot for like a minute, so I don't tend to need to move much. But when I'm painting live, I need to move more. You just sort of get uncomfortable and need to kind of fidget. So anything that I'm going to paint gold, I'm painting black. Anything that's going to be black, I'm painting black. That's basically what I'm doing here. So I'm just working around the miniature. I'm just looking for things that need to be painted black. Hey Will, how you doing? Oh, hey David. It's good to be seen, mate. It's good to be seen. It's nice to be streaming again. This isn't going to become a regular thing, but it's definitely a thing that I want to do every now and again. And today I just happen to really fancy it. So it's nice that folk are turning up to sit and watch and have a chat. All right, I think these pipes in here are probably going to be yellow, so I think I'm going to save those. These little chains that bind the book need to be painted black in anticipation of being painted metallic. So we may as well do that now. I could probably make this a bit easier by doing the shading on the book first. Because it would create some little boundaries of brown that would be easier to sort of hide mistakes in. But if I did make mistakes that I couldn't hide, it would be a nightmare to correct them after that point. So it's better to do it the way where it's sort of harder up front but easier in the long run. You may also find while I've got the miniature this upright that the focus isn't great. That's just because it's turned really upright. There's no point in me adjusting the focus for this sort of short period while I'm at this angle, just because like it's like you don't really need to be this upright very often. Do you know what I mean? Blue's missing some Crimson Fist logos. Weirdly enough, actually, I'm doing this. This is a Blood Angels Librarian Dread. I don't know if you saw my initial post about it on Twitter. I've actually decided to do all of his armor like the same blue that librarians normally are, to be different because I'm playing Blood Angels Successors, so I didn't want to do it like a normal Furioso Librarian Dreadnought with just like the blue sarcophagus and the red armor. I'm trying to just be a little bit different here. What's David saying? I've been doing some group painting sessions the past couple of days. It'd be fun to do something like with you and the crew, like a knitting circle. Oh, that'd be rad. We could probably make that work through Discord. It could be a thing that we do every now and again through Discord, just using because Discord's multi-way chat. I believe it can hold up to like 30 people. It's pretty good. And if you want to see what someone's doing, you can just click their webcam to like make it big. I still may change the color of these leg plates. I don't know if I want to leave them blue or not. I'm still deciding. Still deciding. It's one of the lovely things about having a custom chapter and therefore a custom color scheme. Nothing is wrong. You can just sort of paint everything the way you want to paint it, which means that you get to change your mind if you're not happy with how something looks. Like one of the things I really struggle with a lot of the Codex chapters is things like shoulder pad trims and stuff like that. Like, for example, which blue is that on the armor? It's a workup of 3 blues. It's Cantor, Calidor, and Hoeth. Yeah, like which company is it that has green trim? I think it's like it's either like the 4th or the 6th. Because I think it's 5th that's black, if I remember rightly. Whichever company it is that has green trim anyway. Like, you're never going to collect Ultramarines in that company, are you? Because green trims on blue armor just looks awful. Like, it just gets lost. You know, you end up with no contrast to your miniature, and that ain't a good thing. You know, so like some of the sort of codex compliant stuff, what I'm saying is that, you know, there are certain scenarios that you would never collect that. You would never paint that as your army color scheme because it's just always going to look weird. And so one of the things that I find really liberating and enjoyable about a custom chapter is that, you know, if I already know that I want to do green trims, I make sure that I choose an armor color that's going to look good with green trims instead of being stuck with an armor color that doesn't. And it's really nice to have that freedom, which is one of the things that I find so attractive about kind of making your own chapter. And you still get to use all the rules for whatever chapter you're succeeding. Again, sorry if I'm off camera at the moment. This is just a brief part where I need the miniature really upright. It won't last too long. You still get to use all the rules and, you know, enjoy all of that side, but you don't have to put up with any awkward colour scheme moments. Just got a little error in here that we need to fix. So like, yeah, I don't know, for me, successor chapters they're a really interesting sort of hobby avenue for someone who's, you know, been around this hobby long enough to have collected a number of Space Marine armies and painted an even larger number still of Space Marines themselves. It's nice to sort of have an avenue to creative freedom that is still functionally good on the table. You know, because Blood Angels are pretty fucking sick, actually, like, on the table. They're a pretty good army. Most people kind of rank them at, like, C to B tier, which is still just fine, you know? I've never really been one that always wants to be playing the S tier army anyway. The only time I ever would be playing the S tier army is if the S tier army happened to be the army I wanted to play regardless. And I know that's definitely happened for a few of my friends. Like, I've had a number of friends start collecting Death Guard recently, for example, who had no intention of playing the best army in the edition. That's not what they set out to achieve, but they've ended up playing the best army in the edition, and that's, you know, it's pretty dope. But I've never really been the player who actively seeks to land on the best army for the current meta or rule set. It's just not what I seek in my Warhammer experience, you know. I want to fill the table with miniatures that I think are absolutely fucking dope. That's what I seek in my Warhammer experience. That's what I want from Warhammer. Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about Blood Angels, actually, is that they really play like their fluff. And that's not necessarily always the case. There can be quite a lot of disparity between how an army should play and how it does play, and that can be, you know, that can kind of suck for some players. They really get into, like, the fluff of an army. They really like the feel of them in the books or whatever, and then they get them on the tabletop and they're like, this just doesn't feel the same. It's like, that's really disappointing if you've obviously worked at and collected that army to then find that they don't actually play how you expected them to play. It's pretty It's pretty disappointing stuff, you know. You don't want to really have to go through that as a player. And it's a shame when it happens. So one of the things that I happen to love about Blood Angels is that they do exactly what you would expect Blood Angels to do, and they do it well. One of the things I didn't like about them at first... All about Rule of Cool. Exactly, yeah. All about the Rule of Cool. That's, you know... At the end of the day, the Rule of Cool is what makes you fall in love with your army. And if you love your army, then you're never going to have bad beat stories. You know? You're never going to walk away from a session wishing you hadn't showed up in the first place. Because you came to play with these miniatures that you love and that you're attached to. And you got to do that. If you only play the meta army, then you're only going to be having a good time when you're winning. And you know, as someone who used to play Magic, I definitely understand that way of thinking, but I don't really enjoy that way of thinking, and I don't really enjoy the way you sort of have to approach games if you are of that mindset. It's just not for me, you know. It's not wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just not my way. So for me, Warhammer being a game that is so rewarding on a personal level is wonderful. It's one of the things that I'm assuming that how many of the folk watching right now, hey Anna, hello love, how many of the folk watching right now have either read or listened to my essay that I published recently about why I've sort of moved so heavily from Magic to Warhammer? Like what the reasons behind it are and my thoughts on the subject. I wrote the essay, but then I also released it as an audio file for people to listen to, because I understand that not everybody wants to sit and read something for 20 minutes in the middle of their busy day. Have most of the people watching read it, or are a lot of you not really aware of, you know, what my sort of thoughts and feelings are on that subject? Because if you haven't read it, one thing I would say is that I would love for everyone who follows me really to go and have a quick read to or listen to it. If you listen to it, it's only 16 minutes. But I would love for people to sort of have taken that in, because it's a subject that I'm really interested in talking about at the moment. It's a subject that I really want to kind of stir up some conversation on, and I want to hear other people's views on it. And it's not like I'm, you know, making any hard statements in that essay, so it's not like a subject that really needs to be sort of argued and fought over. It's more just a subject that I think is really interesting to explore, really interesting. I can grab a link for it, David. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll grab a link for it. Copy public link. Paste. I started Magic from end of 4th edition, just with release of Tempest. It was so good back in the days. Yeah, I think Magic back then was really great. I really enjoyed it back then. Yeah, I'm just really interested to see what thoughts it provokes in people, because I get a feeling that these are not thoughts that just I've had when it comes to the Magic versus Warhammer thing. But I don't know, you know, how much people have opportunities to kind of put their thoughts about that sort of stuff out into the world. And, you know, one of the great privileges of having any kind of platform, even one as small as mine, is that you have a free excuse to just kind of put your thoughts out into the world. And so I just wanted to kind of put it out there, because it might encourage other people to, you know, say how they feel about the differences between the two games and how one or the other has affected them or how they've interacted with it, their positive and negative experiences, that kind of stuff, which are things that we should all be talking about in life, right? We should all be talking about both the things that make us happy and feel positive and the things that make us feel sad and upset us. We should have that balance of being able to air our thoughts and beliefs about those things. Okay. I won't bother painting the yellow in yet. I don't really feel a pressing need to dive on the yellow. Let me get this just looking a little bit tidier. Yeah, let's shade some cloth. I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm going to go Agrax. I was kind of torn between whether to go Agrax or Seraphim, and actually sometimes I'll use a mixture of both. But I think I'm going to go Agrax. I think I want the slightly more high contrast shading. So let's begin down here. Thanks, Anna. How have you been anyway? I've not bumped into you on the internet for quite some time. Are you keeping well? Okay. Want a bit more shade in between those pages there. A little bit more contrast between them. Yeah, something like that. So that's that, and then I guess if we throw in the Avaland quickly in the middle, that's like kind of all the base colors on it then. Just thinking the other day that I missed your streams. Oh, bless you. We had a small family vacation recently. It was really nice. Oh, nice. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. Things are kind of, you know, they've sort of normalized for us now. At least from a, you know, from a sort of home life perspective, we've really sort of found our day-to-day routine now, which is, you know, it's good and bad because on one hand, it makes, you know, living in the Rona Apocalypse world a bit easier. But then in the other hand, it also, does encourage boredom and discontent to set in a bit easier, which is, something I particularly worry about for Jenny. Like, I'm lucky enough that I have a job that is very closely linked to my hobby. And so if I ever am bored, I can just do some work, and that is both beneficial in that I enjoy it, and it is beneficial in that it is productive as a work thing. But Jen doesn't really have that, and so I feel, I do sort of worry about her day-to-day being boring, and I do feel bad that she doesn't have that sort of easy release available to her. But actually, she started to rediscover a bit of her creative desire recently, which is brilliant, and hopefully that'll continue to happen, and she'll continue to sort of want to pursue her creative hobbies, because those are the things that will save you when you're bored, right? She painted a beautiful canvas last week. Just this flat grey canvas with loads of really textural flowers on it. She decided to put it up for sale. I don't know whether we'll find a buyer for it, because she doesn't really sell her art very often, so she doesn't have a bunch of people that are regularly looking to buy paintings, sort of paying attention to her work. But it was an absolutely stunning painting. I really, really love it. To be honest, if I had a spare 50 quid, I'd actually buy it so that we can keep it in the house. Right, I think we're good there. So now let's pop back to some Xandri dust and thin it back a bit, and just start to push a bit of that deep shade into some nice midtones to prepare for some highlighting. Like so. That can probably just be highlighted, to be honest. Probably no need to do anything on that. Yeah, Anna streams over on Twitch. She's very lovely. Definitely recommend checking her out. Nicely done. Just get a little bit into these scrolls. Like I said, I'm only really looking for a high tabletop standard on this anyway, so I don't need to be... Stuff like parchment and that, I'd be really careful if I was doing a display commission to really make sure that I get nice texture in it, and nice build up of highlights and all that kind of thing. But if I'm doing it, just sort of high tabletop for my own army, I'm mostly just going to kind of fuck those highlights in there as, pretty basically, and get on with it and be happy. That's one of the things I love about getting to the fact that I still get to paint for myself a couple of days every week, or at least a day every week. I always try to at least make a day to paint for myself every week. And it just, enables you to still kind of paint with that sort of sense of freedom, and that, you know, purely for fun kind of bent to your painting. Something a little bit cool now, which I personally think is pretty sweet. You may not feel the same, but we'll see. We're about to find out. Take a bit of Carroburg Crimson to shade these yellow pipes with. I love how this looks, personally, but may not be for everyone. This is what I also did on my Primaris Mephiston when I painted him. I really like how it looks. Apparently so does the side of this sarcophagus, because it just grabbed a bit of that Carroburg Crimson as I was going past. Come here, Carroburg. Come here. Just pop a little bit in there. Go on. Here we go. Lovely. Lovely. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I really like that. If you don't, shade it with whatever you prefer, you know, but I quite like shading. If it's like a yellow that's got a load of texture to it, I quite like shading it with Carroburg. If it's a flatter yellow, I'm going to obviously be a lot more careful. I'm going to shade it probably with like a Seraphim Sepia, maybe even a slightly diluted Seraphim Sepia, and then push through some highlights with like a yellow and then like a pale yellow as well. And again, you have to remember we're going to be painting text over all of this parchment, so we really don't have to be too obsessive when it comes to like the highlights on it and stuff, because once it's got text all over it, it's going to look very different. Just do it. Just do it. You've been saying that for, Christ, over a year now. It's fun. We don't do it to be good at it. We do it to enjoy it. Who cares if you suck? I suck some days when I paint. God, there's some days I pick up a brush and I'm like, seriously, dude, you do this for a living? Like, the fuck, man? You don't have to be good at something for it to be valid. Like, there's nothing to be nervous about because it just doesn't matter. If you're not painting for yourself, then you've already defeated the object of painting. If you're painting for other people, then there's no point in picking up the brush in the first place. So there's nothing to be nervous about once you realise that. It doesn't matter. It's funny because I actually started receiving far more mini painting commissions once I stopped trying to paint in a way that was designed to be as impressive as possible. Once I sort of started just painting for the enjoyment of it and for my own satisfaction, more people actually became interested in my work. So I don't think it's just, from a mental perspective, from a motivational perspective. Like, I actually also think just from painting your best work, that shit comes when you stop trying to paint for other people. There we go. My first minis are going to be Fallout related. The Fallout miniatures game has lovely miniatures, really lovely miniatures. Oh, are you planning to learn to do the whole sculpting thing and like get a 3D printer and all that? That's also a really interesting way to take it, actually. That's also a really interesting way to take it. Fonzie, your plasma coils are so cool. They are reversed. They're wrong, but they're super cool. But they're definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. Right, where the fuck am I going to put red on this? Like, I really feel like it should have some red on it, but I don't know where I want to put it. Maybe I'll integrate it into, like, the power blade and the claws. That could be fun. And obviously, it'll appear on, like, gemstones as well. Gold is my next target. I'm actually going a lot further through this than I thought I was going to go, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to paint for this long on stream. How long have we been live for? 3 hours? I did not expect to do 3 hours. I thought I'd probably do about 2. So I'm probably going to wrap up like soonish. But while I'm having fun, right? You just finished listening to the essay? Sweet. What did you think? Did it provoke any thoughts in you? You love how I use color? I've definitely thought about application of color a lot more recently. That's definitely something that I've sort of tried to make a conscious effort to consider more in my painting. So just kind of chucking things in there and seeing what works at the time. Try to kind of have at least a bit more of a plan these days. I don't know much about Magic, but I definitely see everything you're saying about Warhammer, particularly since a major reason I got into Warhammer because of mini painting first. Yeah, I think that's the sort of fundamental of it, is that, you know, Warhammer isn't just a game that you can play, and it isn't just a game that you can play for the purpose of being good at it. You know, skilled painters are valuable to the Warhammer community, knowledgeable lore researchers are valuable to the Warhammer community. You can kind of be included and respected and appreciated for contributing far more than just your ability at playing the game. And actually, one of the really interesting things is something that I noticed slightly after the fact, was that actually, if anything, in Warhammer we maybe underappreciate skilled players. I mean, I've been around the hobby for a very, very long time, and I can't name a single like GT winner, or, you know, I can't name anyone who's like famous for being a really good Warhammer player. Perhaps that tells me that we maybe actually underappreciate people who are skilled at playing the game. Maybe it's just that it's a hobby that just isn't centered around the gameplay, you know? Maybe it's just a hobby that is meant to be enjoyed in other ways. See, a lot of these blood drops I want to leave silver because they are angels argentum, not blood angels. But some of them kind of have to be painted gold to sort of stand out and look good. Side brushing there is what lets me brush so fast, even though I'm on a detail piece. I showed off side brushing in the 6 tips video recently. Very interesting analysis, and I'm glad you touched on diversity and inclusivity in the games. It's a tricky one with Magic because it's very hard to, like, Wizards on the surface really pushes this idea that they're a super inclusive company. But it's the problem with it is time and again they seem to sort of prove that they're only really inclusive while it's good for their bottom line. Whereas, you know, Games Workshop have never really made a point of like pushing an agenda of inclusivity. They've mostly always just kind of worked to the assumption that the majority of their player base are just nice people, so they don't really need to herd them. And the only time you've ever really, or I've ever really encountered GW sort of having to kind of step in and say, look, you know, we stand for inclusivity. If you don't believe that, fuck off. Is very recently when all of that stuff started with that YouTuber that no one likes and no one mentions now. And they ended up releasing the "You will not be missed" statement. But like outside of that, there are not streaming reels of examples of GW having to sort of step in and, you know, tell their fan base how they expect them to behave. Whereas, you know, WotC kind of constantly seemed to make assertions towards their expectations of their fan base, and I think what that tells you is that there are probably far more bad eggs in the Magic community. The bad eggs are a real minority in the Warhammer community, I think, whereas unfortunately in the Magic community I think there's just a few more of them. Stands out to me that it's only white people that are ever playing Warhammer in the core rulebooks. Yeah, that's a problem, isn't it? Although I think that is something that, you know, I think like they're starting to realise shit like that, and I suspect we'll see them starting to actively make a point of addressing that kind of thing. But, you know, one of the things that, and don't get me wrong, this isn't remotely a defense of any lack of inclusivity. Like they do need to get better at actually displaying inclusivity, like in their publications and stuff like that. You're quite right to point that out. But one of the things about it all that you do need to sort of bear in mind, just throwing my miniature around, is that even once they identify that is a problem and start to work on it, Warhammer as a hobby, you know, does obviously have a lot more just Caucasian players, and as a result, you know, obviously a lot more members of their staff are probably white British, and so they will probably sort of have to actively go out of their way to hire people for photographs, you know, in order to sort of take the whitewashing out of their content. And so as a result, it's probably something that we're not going to maybe see kind of instantly change. But I do think that they're becoming more aware of stuff like that, and that, you know, they have a responsibility to actually act and minimize how whitewashed their publications are, because I agree with you very strongly that there is a very great white face kind of presence to Games Workshop's publications. I had a chance to get into my Warhammer community locally, so I'm not sure what. Yeah, it's, you know, once you start to go to your LGS, you'll figure out what your local group is like. But exactly, yeah, that's quite right, David. Yeah, I agree completely. Once they start to actually put it into action and do it, it will kind of cascade from there, and they will start to attract a more diverse audience. And the great thing is, you know, during the start of the BLM riots, when everything was kind of starting to come to the forefront of people's attention, one of the first things the Warhammer community did on Twitter was like a big drive for increasing the visibility of black content creators, you know, black hobby content creators. And there was a couple of really great content creators who I had the fortune of encountering as a result of that, you know, as a result of that boosted visibility. You know, I probably would have not run into were it not for that, because, you know, their accounts were quite small. One of them in particular, Jacob Lagu, I think is his name, a really inspiring miniature painter. You know, he's very sort of that same kind of school of painting as me, as like, it doesn't have to be ultra smooth and ultra perfect, it just has to be fucking cool. And he paints some really cool miniatures that are a real joy to look at. And you know, I was lucky enough to encounter him as a result of people helping to improve the platform and visibility of black content creators. And so I hope that people will continue to do that, because anything that may lead to you finding your new favorite content creator when they weren't visible enough for you to find them previously is a truly great thing, and we should definitely be doing what we can to facilitate that. Man, why am I going around and painting rivets gold? Why did I decide that was a thing that I wanted to do? I've only got a couple left now. I've practically done them all, but that certainly wasn't part of the plan when I started painting this. Looks nice though. So there's that. I don't think he would actually have gold rivets. Gold rivets don't seem like a good idea for a battle machine, but he's got them now. You have them now, brother librarian. What you gonna do about it? Go and look fabulous on the battlefield. That's what you're gonna do. Let that bling sing. You've got a golden rivet? What? 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 Shaky hands. Shaky hands. Extremely shaky hands. Got there. Yeah, those gold rivets look really nice. That was really, really worth doing. Like, it just creates a little standout point on the miniature. It was really worth doing. Get some Rakeland on those now, I guess. Just make sure they're all filled in with sufficient strength. And then I think we'll be wrapping this stream up fairly shortly, I think. As much as it has been really, really lovely hanging around with you. Starting to get hungry and kind of want some dinner soon? Yeah, exactly. It's a Libby. It's gotta be a bit posh. Oh, Willy Wonka, yeah, sure. It's just gold leaf, some ceramite. Yeah, not only like strip the heads, but like completely flatten the threads off as well. Gold is quite soft. Oh dear. Thanks, Anna. I'm glad to have you here. I am glad to have you here. Nice little mixture of sort of old friends from Twitch and new followers from YouTube seem to be sort of popping in over the course of this stream. That's really lovely. Because as much as I definitely don't miss Twitch, I absolutely miss some of the folk that I used to regularly talk to on Twitch. I just, you know, kind of stay away from Twitch these days, so I don't really encounter them as much, which is a bit of a shame, but, you know, I don't really have any desire to spend my time on Twitch, so it's not a great solution to that problem. Oh, that's what the Rakeland did. This is going alarmingly well. I honestly thought I'd be at this a lot longer before I get to this stage. Hell of a lot longer. I'm going to do some really interesting stuff. I'll give you a quick sort of preview of this. I'm not going to sit and do the whole thing because it'll take quite a long time. But what I'm going to do with the force weapon and the claws, basically, is get a glaze of Mephiston red, and on this flat section here I'm going to work it towards the front by flat brushing it like this. And then on this lower section here I'm going to work it towards the back like that. What we're going to end up with is like a typical power weapon glow where it goes kind of swooping in two opposite directions, but in a black to red. Do you find that you get as many randoms clicking on YouTube as opposed to Twitch? I don't know, this is my first YouTube stream, so it's hard to say. I know that this definitely feels more comfortable though, I can tell you that much. I feel a lot more relaxed than I used to when I streamed on Twitch. Hey Darling, how you doing, bud? And then yeah, we'll do sort of a similar thing on the claws, but just working back to front. Like this. Slow day at work? Oh, no way. New role on Monday. What, you got like a promotion coming in or something? The only thing is, Exordium, is I think, you know, in order to sort of build your live stream on YouTube, I think it needs to kind of be supplemented by recorded content. That seems to be the case from what I can tell. Like most of the people that stream on YouTube also make videos. I can't think of anyone that I've seen who just streams. Right? As far as I'm aware, everyone who makes live content on YouTube also makes pre-recorded content. New project opened up. Oh, nice. Yeah, fixed hours seems good. Fixed hours definitely seems good. And just new project in general, right? It's just nice to have something fresh to get your teeth into. You see, as this is starting to build up now, we're starting to get that kind of typical glazed power blade effect. But it's black to red, which is kind of not super like what you'd expect to see. It's not, you know, it's not just another glowy power blade. Like, it's actually something a little bit different, a little bit eye-catching. Kind of makes you go, oh, that's interesting, instead of just like, oh yeah, power blade. Of course, we all know how much I like a green power blade, but I've painted a lot of fucking green power blades in my life. Oh, it's mad. It's mad. The problem is, a lot of the issue is that, like, they don't know when shit's coming to them, really. They're working off of estimates from their suppliers. But what doesn't help is that they don't have, like, a system for automatically informing customers. The only way you ever find out that there's a problem is when you chase them, which, you know, it's not ideal. It's really not ideal. If your customers have to chase you to know what's going on, then you need to think about if you're offering good enough customer service, really. A lot of customers don't want to have to make the first move in order to find out what the status is of products that they've already bought and they're just waiting for delivery on. And like, that's not even being a Karen about it, you know, that's like most people would feel that way. Sent an email asking them to cancel part of the order that wasn't in stock since it was like 2 paints. Yeah, I've had to do that before. I've actually had to do that before. Oh, was that the part that you were waiting for before I shipped to you? That infamous order. It took a fucking long time, didn't it? Especially as, like, you had a commission from me that I was trying to combine with it, which was why it was irritating. So the whole reason I offered to do it in the first place was like, well, I've got to send you your commission anyway, so I'm mailing you. If I can help you out and make your life easier by sending you some other shit that you've ordered at the same time, then that's awesome. But it was not meant to be. Element Games had other thoughts on the subject. You will not help your friends. Whenever you see these nicely built up glaze blends, if you're ever wondering how long they take, the answer is fucking ages. The good news is it's very forgiving. It's not particularly difficult. The bad news is that there is no fast way to do it. If you want to do these glaze blends, these gradients this way, your only option is to just take your time. But then also, like, it is starting to look badass, so, you know. It's always the way. It's always the way. You always think it's going to be quick. You always think it's going to be over in a jiffy. Hello, love. I'm stopping shortly, so...
I'll stick the kettle on then.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Do you want my cup? Oh, she can reach it. Thanks, babe. What an angel that woman is. Comes in to check on me if I need a drink. She's so good to me. She's gone again now, Anna. The delay's too long on YouTube, unfortunately. By the time you guys see anything on screen, it probably happened like 8 or 9 seconds ago. The delay's quite deep. If you really want to start having fun with these blends, you can actually start to reverse glaze them in the opposite direction as well to like smooth the shadows back. You can really go nuts with this kind of blending. That's sort of what I find so fun about it. It's true, I am pretty bad at remembering to drink. I nursed that one coffee for like the first 2 hours of this stream, and we're now 3.5. So it's been about an hour and a half since I've had a drink, at my guess. I'm just generally quite bad at looking after myself, to be fair. I need an adult. Jenny is my adult. That's her job. She reminds me to do the things that you're supposed to do when you're a grown-up. It's starting to focus now right towards the front. What I will do when I next do a session on this is I'll actually come in and start placing some actual brighter highlights, like some higher luminosity highlights. This is just kind of establishing the red blend, but then there will be some nice kind of bright, probably orange highlights. Eventually you reach a point where you're adding so little paint that it starts to, you start to be able to speed up a lot, because you can just kind of, by the time you've finished working one area, the one that you were working previously is dried, so you can just kind of start, like I'm doing now, just being a lot more constant. Take care, David. See you later, mate. Yeah, exactly. We all need a good adult in our life. This is it. Like, I'd be screwed without her, and she knows it. She knows it. And it's funny as well, because I hate feeling like I'm ever imposing on anyone, or like You know, like they have to... I don't like accepting help, I guess, is the easiest way of putting it. I'm quite a proud person. And, you know, typically, like in relationships, I wouldn't normally really let my partner run around after me like that. I'd feel really not okay with it. Jen's really the first person that I've ever allowed to take care of me like that. Never really liked it previously, but I suppose, you know, I don't really like it now. Like I always feel annoyed at myself for like the fact that Jen has to come in and remind me to have a drink and stuff like that. But it is, you know, it's nice to let someone care for you. It's nice to just, you know, let somebody express their love for you through looking out for you in kind of practical day-to-day terms. So it is a good feeling. Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to go for. But like I say, I'm going to start, next session I attack this, I'll start to actually refine that with some further highlighting. But initially you can see it creates a very, very clean blend. It's just really slow. Like we've practically got pure Mephiston red here now. In fact, if I were to take some pure Mephiston red, which I'll do here, and apply it to the tips of each of these claws, you'll see when it dries, it's practically invisible. So we're almost at completely saturated Mephiston red. You can barely tell where I've hit those claws with that Mephiston red. So that tells you that we're practically at full saturation. Here we're still not. We still need to do more work here. The blade is always going to take longer though. But what I'm going to do for the one final thing for this session that I'm going to do is just grab some blood for the blood god and just put in all the gems. Whenever I'm doing gems to tabletop, I don't paint them. I only paint gems when I'm doing display, really. So I just grab, instead of actually painting them, you know, hand painting them, I just grab blood for the blood god over a metallic paint, and that gives a nice look to a gem. A gloss paint over a metallic paint will obviously always be super shiny, so just something worth bearing in mind if you want to do like really quick, easy gems. Some sort of gloss, quite a high pigment colour, dumped over the top of some sort of metallic will give you just a really quick, easy gem. So if you need a quick, easy gem, then Bob's your mother's brother. Whoop, whoop. There's one here, don't forget that one. Oh, you forget that one. And then, you know, once you've given them a minute to dry, there's nothing wrong with going in for a second pass as well. If you really want that glossy goodness, sometimes you just need that second pass to hammer it home for you. I mean, you could even do lens as well, like the lens on this target here. Sorry, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. The lens on that target there, I can also do the same way. It'll work absolutely fine. Again, perhaps if I was doing like high tabletop or display, or if I was doing display, certainly I wouldn't do them this way. I'd actually manually paint the excuse me, the highlight and the shadow into the gem, and then I'd gloss varnish it over the top to give it the look. But when it's just high tabletop for my own armies, then a bit of blood for the blood god does me. More than happy with that. There we go. So I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. I think we are making some good inroads. We're making some good solid progress there. I think, like, I'll probably only need to put another maybe 2 hours into this and it'll be finished to the point that I'm happy. So we're talking about 6-7 hours, which, you know, for a high tabletop character model, I think that's a reasonable investment of time. I think that's, you know, that's an okay amount of time to spend. I also need to put these chains in silver, so that needs to come back in for a touch-up. The frames around some of these sensors need to be done in silver, so that'll obviously need to come back in for a touch-up. So there's still work to do. One thing I'll do very briefly now before I end the stream, mostly just so that I don't forget, to be honest, is just take some of this black with a big brush and just get the base area here all base coated again, so that I can very quickly finish the base off when the time comes. So there's a good chance that I won't paint tomorrow, so the black that's on my palette now will get wasted if I don't use it. That's why I'm choosing to do this. Always be thinking about stuff like that, you know. You like it, Anna? Yeah, it should be pretty nice. This army is definitely not the most pushed in terms of the paint jobs. The Tau army that I'm building is definitely the most pushed in terms of the paint jobs. The Tau army is going to all be fairly well loved. Quite a bit of time put into it. Because I definitely want one or two of the house armies to be painted to a really high standard. I'd like at least, you know, a couple of them to be, but obviously there's no way I'm ever going to find time for all of them to be. I have plans for 6 armies at the moment, but it'll realistically probably end up growing more from there. You know, that's just 6 armies that I want to do. Like, I want to do another Chaos Space Marine army. One of the more sort of dedicated to purpose ones, like the Word Bearers army is more of a sort of it's not chaos soup as such, but it's like a bit more sort of it likes to do a little bit of everything, you know. It likes a few units that are good at this and a few units that are good at that, and it's not specialized in any way. And I'd like to do one of the specialized chaos armies as well. Because I think, you know, you need to sort of represent both sides of chaos, like all-round chaos and focused chaos. But obviously, like, I don't want to do Thousand Suns or Death Guard because they're such kind of not single-purpose factions, but they're just such a known entity. Like, most people that are into Warhammer kind of know how those armies play. I want to have armies for people to use that they may not have played before, or they may not have played them in that way before. So for my CSM armies, I want either World Eaters or Emperor's Children as the more sort of focused army. Obviously, Emperor's Children would be a really shooty army. World Eaters would be a really combat-y army. I'm not sure which way I'll go with that yet. And then I want to... TJ, take care, buddy. Look after yourself, dude. I want to do... Genestealer Cults as well, just because Genestealer Cults is an army that just doesn't see a lot of play, because it's a really, really high skill investment army. You need to get really good with it in order to do remotely well with it. So it's an interesting army to, you know, to just be able to show people. But yeah, I think that's about where I'm calling it for the day. I hope you all enjoyed this rare little stream. I can't promise that you're going to see a bunch of these. I can't promise that you'll even see another one of these for quite some time. But it's been really good fun, and I very, very much appreciate you folks spending some time with me, hanging out with me. So thank you for that. There will be a new video going up. Well, there'll be a new vodcast going up probably tomorrow night. I'll sort of pop in the morning and start uploading it, and then it'll probably take about 4 hours to upload, and then probably another 2 hours to process. So it'll be probably tomorrow afternoon. I've also still got to rip the audio for the audio version, but that's not a rush because that doesn't have a set day that has to go. But there will be a new vodcast anyway, coming quite soon. And then Tuesday, there will also be a new video, and Thursday there will be a new video. So keep your eyes open, there's cool new stuff coming. It's all going to be very interesting and fun and sexy, and I'm quite happy with actually everything that's coming out next week, so I hope you folks enjoy it. But until then, folks, I will see you around.